right now. I see dead people.
Welcome to Blondes and Booze. You are about to embark on a journey, one that often leads to more questions than answers. But fear not, your host, Krista, Aaron, and Brandy have the experience, the perseverance, and yes, even the gifts to pull back the veil and allow us to glimpse the other side. They will share not only their experiences, but will introduce you to world-renowned researchers and experiencers to help you find answers in the murky waters of what we call the paranormal. Their bonds with each other reach far beyond friendship, resulting in a pull no punches approach to the many subjects they explore. Their goal? To open eyes, hearts, and even minds to what lies on the other side, and the answers residing there.
Hey everybody, welcome to Blondes and Booze Paranormal Podcast. We appreciate everybody tuning in to us tonight. This is a special kind of to end out our Bootober night, and we've been doing ghost and hauntings and that kind of thing all throughout the month of October. And what better guest could we have, right, Brandy?
Right. And I'm so sad. It's almost over. It's just almost over.
I know.
I'm just sad.
We like Halloween.
But unfortunately, we have Josh Turner on tonight to, give us our finale for Bootober. He is working to get online right now. He's dealing with a couple other things. He said he'll be on as soon as possible. We have talked to him, so he is coming. But I'm super excited because, I just love some good stories. I don't care what they are. I don't care if they're Bigfoot. I don't care if they're Dogmen. And, I love my ghosties. So there's always that.
Why don't you remind everybody what to watch this week?
Well, we've got something kind of special going on. I want to give a shout out to two channels tonight that they're almost to a milestone. And if you have not subscribed to either of these two channels, please do. The first one is Bigfoot Michigan Rob. He's getting close to his 3,000 milestone. And if you've not subscribed to him, make sure you do. He's super, super great guy. You might have heard him on Josh Turner's show last night. So get on over there and like and subscribe and hit the notification button. Our second one is Barton Nunley. With his Inhumanoids. He's getting close to his 5,000 subscriber milestone, and we're super excited about that. He is now he's going to start doing some lives. Mm-hmm. And we're helping him out with it. We're getting it going, and we have a special coming on tomorrow night. We're going to do a Dogman and Bigfoot Q&A. And Bart's going to be there.
Bart is going to be on Bart's channel. Yeah, it won't be on.
Yeah, it's going to be on Bart's channel, and we're just going to be helping him out. That's all we're doing. So that's all we're doing. You're just going to see our faces. Right. He's going to be there to answer all of your questions that you have for him. So make sure you check that out. That's tomorrow night at what time did we schedule it?
I believe
5 p.m. Central.
5 p.m. Central Time. Yes.
5 p.m. Central Time. So if you haven't liked his channel, make sure you get on over there and like, subscribe, and hit that notification button. Of course, with Paranormal Roundtable, make sure you get over there and like and subscribe. But on with our channel lineup, first and foremost, it's Monday night at 8 p.m. Central for the last week. We're going to be doing 8 p.m. on November 6th. We're starting at 7 p.m. with Texas Front Porch. That's with Tex and myself. On Tuesdays at 8 p.m. Central, it's Bigfoot Michigan Rob with Beyond BMR. On Wednesdays at 7 p.m. Central, it's Donnie Cho Says Stuff. And starting a week from Wednesday, it will be Inhumanoids with Barton Nunley at 8 p.m. Central. Thursdays at 12 p.m. Central, it is going to be Brunch with Bigfoot Michigan Rob and his lovely co-host Krista. Thursday nights, of course, it's us at 8 p.m. Central with Blondes and Booze. And if you can't get enough, you can come back on Friday at 8 p.m. Central and catch us again with Blondes, Booze, and the Woo. 2 p.m. on Saturdays, Tex and Danielle Devo release their newest episode of Infamous Minds. And we always give a special shout out to Midwest Night Watchers and Piercing the Veil at 6 p.m. on Sundays.
Yeah. So there's a pretty good lineup. And actually, Bart and Letitia kind of took Brandy and I under their wing. They introduced us to Land Between the Lakes. And they've become family to us. So we appreciate everything that they've done. And I know Bart is only like 300 away from 5,000 subscribers. So if you have not subscribed to Inhumanoids with Bart and Nunley, please do that. And then also on the same token, Bigfoot Michigan Rob, he is very near and dear to Brandy and I. And he is only, I think, a little over 100 subscribers away from 3,000. So if you guys could show Bigfoot Michigan Rob some love too. He actually, it's because of Bigfoot Michigan Rob, the reason why we joined the Texas Front Porch, so we definitely appreciate him. And they're both great channels. And if you guys just go and subscribe to both of them, help them to get to that milestone.
Right.
Yeah.
See my ball going off, Krista?
I do. So Brandy actually has a little haunting stuff going on in her house, and she's been setting up some equipment while we do shows, because we actually have captured a good EVP on one of our shows and it's plain as day. And actually, you know what? I think I can play that real quick.
Oh, absolutely. I love hearing it, because it's weird because we don't know. The guest we had on was Heather Mosier from Small Town Monsters. Oh, there it goes again. We had her on, and she was having a couple little things happen in her house and a little bit of activity. Now, what we're hearing sounds like a young girl. Now, I have not ran into that. That is something new to me.
Yeah.
And I'm really hoping that it's from her. I can't take anymore, because this thing is going bonkers back here.
Right, absolutely.
I've got my hands right here. I'm not touching anything, and I'm making sure I'm not touching nothing. I'm like, okay, I'll just hold my hands right here.
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and share this with you all while we wait for Josh. I just got a text from him, and he'll be here shortly. So while we're waiting, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to play this EVP for you guys. And it's nothing negative. It's nothing bad, just so you guys can kind of hear what Brandy goes through. So hold on just a second. Let's see. I got to share the screen.
Yeah, because what you're going to hear, first of all, is you're going to hear Krista, and we're actually ending a show, and you hear Krista saying bye-bye, and then you'll hear this small little voice saying bye-bye, like it's mimicking her.
So I'm going to play the enhanced version. So
turn up your speakers.
I just played it. Okay, hold on. Let me
play it again.
Bye. Bye.
One more time.
Bye.
Play the other one, which leads into that.
The original now. So hold on. Bye-bye. There it is. Let's do it. Bye-bye.
And then play the enhanced version one more time.
Okay.
Bye.
Interesting, huh?
Doesn't that sound like a little child? That sounds like a little child to me.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. As much as I love Heather Mosier, I'm hoping that's not mine.
Yeah. And as Brandy said, that was the thing. We had Heather Mosier from Small Town Monsters. She was our guest, and she has a little bit of haunting activity going on in her house as well. So we don't honestly know if it was from Brandy's house or if it was from Heather's house. So we're kind of up in the air at that.
Right.
Yeah.
So. And we're going to have Heather back on in December. Mm-hmm. And we're going to be talking about axe murders and all kinds of, fun stuff like that. So we're going to really be paying attention to see if it happens again.
Right. Absolutely. We, I just don't know what it is. If it's a boy or a girl, or sounds like a kid to me, but who knows?
It sounds like a child. It does sound like a child. And, that's one of the things that I do not like in an investigation. I will say that straight up. I do not like children because you never know what you're dealing with. It could be something really bad because as Krista and I know that usually negative entities always show up as elderly people or children. Most generally, I mean, that's not saying that small children can't get lost along the way, but it's just scary.
That's true. While we're waiting on Josh, I'll tell you all about a private case that I did. I would say this has probably been maybe 10 years ago with a paranormal group that I used to be a part of. And we got called in to a case. It was actually in downtown St. Charles, Missouri, which is very, very historical area. Lots of old buildings, lots of old houses. And it was a family. It was a mom, a dad, and they had 2 teenage boys. And, they just had weird things going on. And they had a fish tank, and all their fish died. And they had this tank set up for quite a while. So it wasn't like, something just happened. They tested their water. Everything was fine. They got more fish. Once again, they all died. And the kids were getting scratched. The husband, the wife were getting scratched. There was just things that were not going well at all for this family. So that's what we do. We go in, we help people, and we went in and did a full-on investigation. And while there, I experienced some crazy things myself. They had a room that you walk into their porch and then go into their house. And that door was open. It was fall time. It was about this time of the year. It was beautiful out. So the wind was blowing in and letting, just getting some air in there. And that back door actually slammed shut. And we were sitting there in the kitchen, and 2 of us felt something go through us. I really, honestly, I can't say what it was, but it just wasn't right. So then later that evening, we go through everything. We do believe people when they say that they're having things happen, but we like to experience for ourselves and get real evidence. We try to debunk first. There's got to be a reason for this or a reason for that. If we can't come up with a reasonable explanation, then maybe it can be paranormal. So we, continued throughout the night, and just a lot of weird things happening. And we would take pieces of equipment over. She had a collection of dolls. And one of the dolls, we kept getting spikes in our equipment. And the lady had said she had bought it from a resale shop. So that kind of, we're not saying that the doll was haunted. However, it was just kind of weird. And the energy that doll gave off was not very nice, to be honest with you. So we continued throughout the night. We talked to everybody separately. The kids had dabbled with the Ouija board, and, so did our spiel about that. So, that wasn't something they should have been doing, but they did it because they had something going on in their house. So they wanted to try to make contact. So fast forward a little bit throughout the evening, another teammate of mine actually got hit, not scratched, but hit in the back. And there was actually a hand mark on the back of his shoulder where that happened, which was pretty crazy. So throughout the night, we're doing our thing. And the lady, we told her, something about this doll, it keeps spiking our equipment. So she asked if we would take it, and we did. and a fellow teammate of mine. She lived out in the country. And the next day we took the doll and I went over to her house. We buried that doll in the back of her property with salt. And we stayed in contact with the people, as we always do. We don't just do an investigation and drop you. That's not how we roll. You know, we're there for you forever. And these people, absolutely nothing after that. So we come to the conclusion that haunting was actually caused, it was the doll. Crazy, huh? Yeah.
That is kind of crazy.
Yeah.
But I'm not a doll fan. It's
I'm not either.
They creep me out.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. I can't imagine. And I know you did that with another paranormal group, and that's like one of my top 3 things I don't want to do. I don't want to deal with any type of attachments or anything to do with dolls. I just don't. I mean, they're creepy and
absolutely. Yeah. So we made it right with her, and we took the doll, and everything stopped. So, in my mind, that tells me she brought it in herself there, because of the doll.
Right. And I know that, we've talked several times about attachments to like any type of item. It could be a hairbrush for all we know. And that stuff just really scares me. And then, there are times where you just can't pinpoint what it is, especially if you're like an antique shopper, you like antiques in your home or family heirlooms, you've got all those and
yeah.
So there was
go ahead, Brandy.
I was just going to say, there's been many stories about haunted dolls. Of course, we know of a Robert and Annabelle, and there's another one that I'm hearing about now, which is called Hope. And I mean, oh my God, no, just no.
Yeah. I agree. I mean, I'm not one that I love antiques. I think they're beautiful. I'm a history buff. I love all that kind of stuff. However, I'm not one that wants that in my house.
Yes. And then we have some friends too that deal in haunted cars.
We do.
And, I mean, just when you think that, it's just household items or things you kept in your home. No, it could be, a car, and we've all heard of Christine and in that movie. And, I mean, they haven't found anything to that extreme, but they have had some pretty crazy things happen during, their investigation of the cars. And I would never think to look, but then again, people love their cars.
Yeah.
Especially, ones that they've restored and took care of, or, they finally bought the car they always dreamed of, or, wow.
Can you imagine
scary.
Just like even a junkyard, there's lots of those around, people go get parts. How many of those cars that might have something attached to them? I never really thought about a junkyard, but why not?
Right, because remember we were talking about Dennis Carroll in Flight 401, how that had crashed and how they had used, they went out in the swamp, gathered these parts that were still usable, and then put them on other planes. Right. So there was quite a few people that were having hauntings in different airplanes because they put these parts onto those airplanes. And so I'm that's just one of those things that.
Yeah, I am not one that is into antiques at all. I think they're beautiful. I love going and looking at them, but not to have them in my house. Not to have them in my house. No way. I think there's enough out there that can move in. I don't want to invite it in, and that's a way of inviting.
Right. I always like looking at the furniture, the period pieces and all these kind of other things. And I'm like, oh, I would love to have that. And I'm like, no, maybe not. Right. I mean, you could seriously cleanse them before putting them in your house. And I do recommend cleansing anything that's secondhand before putting it in your home. But
there are a lot of people that, that do collect that. And I don't knock them, just know you could be opening up doors you can't close,
Yeah, you might be getting more than you bargained for, you know.
Yep. And, my dream always as a kid was to have, buy one of them big old Victorian style homes, and put time period pieces in there. But as I've gotten older and what I've learned, I have no interest at all in it.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's kind of like, okay, so my mom, well, it was actually my grandmother. She had a picture of her grandparents in the home. Okay.
Mhm.
And it was a circular picture with the big thick wood on it. And somehow it fell and broke the glass on it. So there was not anything encasing the picture,
Yeah.
but there was, my great grandparents, or however that goes. Anyway, so that picture was, there. And then the next thing you know, my grandmother was starting to have activity in her home. Like they could hear like something running around in their attic. Things would fall over. Like things would
Hold on
start
one
being
second,
moved.
Brandy. I'm going to go ahead
Okay.
and bring Josh in. He's
Okay. And it would get
Hello,
moved
sir.
to different places. So finally, what had happened is my grandparents got the thing encased again, and I don't know if you've ever seen those, but it's the big thick bubble glass that goes over these
Mhm.
pictures, these old time pictures,
Oh, yeah.
and they haven't had a problem since.
Awesome.
So,
Hi, Josh.
Hey,
Thank you for joining us. We sure do
Hello.
appreciate this.
hey. So, what do we got going on here?
We're just kind of talking. We were just telling some of some private cases that we've investigated and kind of talking about haunted items.
Oh, okay. We were
Yep.
talking about that a little bit last night with BMR.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
was in your
yeah.
chat. We both were actually.
Yeah.
So we're just wasting time. We were just wasting time until you got here.
Okay. All right. Let me see here. Just if I can get in.
Yeah, we just, like I said, the haunted thing, I personally, my thing is to help people. So I enjoy like the private cases and, getting out doing that thing. Brandy also does that. She likes to help people as well, but she also goes to other places and, some of the bigger, I guess, what do you want to call it? Name.
Just locations that are more well known.
Yeah. Yep. So it's all good.
Mm-hmm.
So, anything in particular you wanted to start with, or you just want to just
the floor is yours, Josh?
Well,
yeah, we're just talking about spooky stories, ghost stories.
Yep.
We don't even care cryptid. We love it all, actually.
What do you guys usually focus on? What is your main focus? What do you guys?
A little bit of anything. If it's weird, we'll talk about it.
Hey, Tex, what's going on?
Because we like to get out there and look for cryptids. Of course, we do that, and we're paranormal investigators. Of course, we do that. So I guess we're jack of all trades.
Yeah. Thursday night we actually did a little boots on the ground. We don't call it boots on the ground typically, but we do go to locations where people have seen things, and just get a feel for the terrain and go and look around. So we did kind of an impromptu. I guess you want to call it boots on the ground. And we went out to a place called Turkey Creek where there have been 2 Bigfoot sightings that have been given to us. Further up the road from there, somebody had a rock thrown at their truck several years ago, guy and his son. And then there was an encounter that was what I call the bear man. It's what me and David Wedley have been researching in that area. And he likes to go and look around in Blanco, Marble Falls, those areas. And there's so many stories out there that we figured, you know what, there's something out here. We got to go check it out. So we did. And we actually heard something. We heard a roar, growl, roar. I don't know. It was really weird. It was like I don't know how to explain it. It was freaky. We got out and it was on the other side of the creek and we were all standing there. And right when we were getting to start the video, we heard it and we were just like, what was that? So it's kind of freaky. But,
so did you stay or, and investigate a little bit more? Or?
We stayed there for about an hour and a half altogether, so it was drizzly and whatever, but the weather was fine. It was just a little bit wet, but, it was muddy, but we walked around and we went to the different spots where people had seen things. It's very desolate. I mean, there's not a lot of people out there. Once you get to that part of the lake, there's nowhere to go. It's just the lake goes all the way around it. But because of the drought, even though it's raining, it's still kind of dry in certain spots. Now there's a little spot that kind of loops around, and that's where this guy Sean had told us that he had seen
a Bigfoot type creature. He didn't say it was Bigfoot, but he described
Mm-hmm.
it like as you would think it was a Bigfoot type creature, and it had a fish in its hand because those fish pull right there.
Yeah.
And, and that's why they went over there to go fish, because they were like, hey, let's go. It was broad daylight. And
Wow.
they went over there while it was kind of rainy and it was cold.
Mm-hmm.
And so they figured nobody would be out there, but apparently Bigfoot was out there. So
Wow.
I went out there,
no.
and then one of them climbed up an embankment, but they described it kind of like a throwback looking creature. I mean, ugly, very ugly. And
Right.
it's funny because he says my girlfriend ran, but his cousin, who's a big guy, he's like kind of like me. He's a big dude, and he's a pretty muscular guy. And he was like, he ran before Kate did. So I was like,
Wow.
I don't
Wow.
know him, so I don't want to make fun of him because I don't know the guy. But I was just like, he ran before your
Right.
girlfriend did. Kate's not a big person, so I was
Yeah.
kind of taken aback by that. But
Yeah. And like we've been out too, and I'm not going to lie, it's creepy out there, and especially when you hear of these accounts that, people have encountered and you're at these locations, it's scary. It really is. So your guy from running, I'm not going to say.
I mean, who knows what I mean, I saw something that looked like it could have been a Bigfoot when I was with my wife at Row Lane. And she saw it from the side profile, and she's like, it wasn't a dog man. She's like, it was flat, had a flat face, whatever. I kind of saw it, like I saw a glimpse of it, and I'm pretty sure I believe what she says. It didn't look like a cow, and it was wide, it was huge. I saw the back, and it looked like something squatting down, going around behind a tree, sort of ape-like. But I mean, I don't know what that was, but I don't really claim it as like as a Bigfoot experience because it wasn't really my experience, but. If I were to see one coming up an embankment, like 7-8 feet away from me, I probably would have freaked out too. And I don't know if I'd run, but if my wife is there, my first instinct is going to be to protect her.
Sure.
But if she's already running long way, she's already left me behind. I guess I'm going to have to run too. I don't know, because I don't want to. I mean, if danger's, she's away from the danger, then you got to go.
Yeah.
Because who can fight one of these things? I mean, people that talk about that all the time, like I'll do this, I'll do that. Yeah, right. Sure, you would.
Yeah, you don't know what you'll do until you encounter one, and that's the truth.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know. You can say you'll do this or do that, but you just don't know. Mm-hmm. Have you ever thought about coming over to the LBL and going with Bart?
Yeah, it's so far away. I mean, that's the only problem. There's no fear involved. I mean, I feel like if I'm with Barton and the guys, I don't think I'm going to be afraid. I mean, me and Barton are not chicken-hearted people.
No.
I'll tell you what happened last night. I'll give you a story that happened last night. My wife has made a board game. And so the prototype is laid out. We already have somebody who's interested in mass producing it. And it's a pretty cool game. We still have some of the kinks to work out. So we had some friends over. And these are some old friends. They're from South Texas. My friend Chris Clough and his wife Laura. And we were all playing the game. And we're having, and I'm not going to say any names or anything like that. We're having some situation going on with some people. Mm-hmm. And I was warned by a couple ladies that this one in particular likes to send things to people. And so yesterday I saw something walk, it's clear as day. I saw something walk through my living room while we're in the kitchen at the kitchen table. And then we have like a dining room, and then we have the kitchen, then there's like a sitting room, whatever. And this thing walked like right through my living room. And when I looked over at it for a split second, it looked like a full-bodied man, about 6.5 feet tall. But the legs, all I saw, like when I looked straight ahead, were the legs, like black. It was just black.
Wow.
And then about, I'd say probably 45 minutes later, I was reaching for the dice, and it was my turn. And the game is pretty cool. It's a paranormal roundtable game, and it's called Paranormal Proof. And it's really cool. I can't tell you the idea because until we get it done, whatever. So I was getting ready to roll the dice, and Chris and we were laughing, and I looked right at him, and I saw standing behind him, but in the sitting room, like there's the dining room. Like I said, there's like the kitchen, and then like where we were eating is what they call, I guess, the breakfast room or something. I don't know. Mm-hmm. They have all these goofy names for stuff. And there's like an island, and then on the other side of that, you can see, and we have a big aquarium in the sitting room, and it was standing right next to the aquarium. And it was a full-on, like completely black figure just standing there. And I saw it straight up for like a few seconds, and then it was gone. So I was on the phone with Bettina about it earlier, and apparently she's seen it. And then a couple other people who have these same issues have seen it too. So it
Wow.
was really disturbing. And then my wife, she goes, we go to sleep because we had to get up early so we could take our company to go, go do some stuff. And when we were getting ready to go to bed, she couldn't sleep because she felt like something was wrong. So when I went to sleep, I had very fitful sleep. But when I'm dealing with stuff like that, I do that. But I'm okay. I told her, don't wake me up, leave me alone, let me deal with it because I know how to deal with it.
Right.
And so she said I was moving around, tossing and turning, which I do when I'm dealing with stuff like that. And so I'm laying there, and she saw something when she went out of the room and came back in. She saw something standing over my bed,
Yeah.
like the black figure, and it freaked her out. And then she laid there and next to me in the bed, and she didn't go to sleep. What do you say to my PRT friends in the chat? Please keep the paranormal community real by subscribing to all my podcast friends, Bonds and Booze, Text, BMR, Helmet, Holland, and Crypto Studies Institute. Yeah, please. And also Crypto Normal Encounters with B Moss.
Yep.
We can throw her in there too. And also BMR, another good guy.
Yep. Text.
And Text.
Yeah.
So anyways, she saw this thing. And so she laid there in the bed next to me. And this all happened like last night into this morning. Eventually, she woke me up. It was 7:03 a.m. I jumped up out of bed, and I had to walk through every nook and cranny in every room in the house and do a cleanse. And we used holy water, and I used the it looks like this, Saint Benedict.
Oh wow!
And I took it, and I went around the room, and then I went around the bathroom and every single spot. And I could feel this thing like moving around from room to room. Wherever I was going, it was moving away. And then eventually it was in our closet. I could feel it right there real strong. And it felt like something right on me. And all you can do in that situation, folks, and I'm going to tell you right now, you cannot be afraid.
Right.
Any fear you have, you have to get rid of it. And you have to trust fully in the armor of God and Christ. I'm telling you right now, because if you're afraid, it can feed on that. And Crypto Normal Barton. And so funny though, like Mr. Nunley, right after that happens, I go and I lay down, and my wife's like, I feel like we're okay, whatever. And she went straight to sleep. Boom. So about 4.5 hours go by. I didn't sleep again until about 4.5 hours later. And I was just about to go to bed, and Barton called. And then me and Barton compared notes, and something had happened to him and Letitia yesterday and the day before. So we're talking about it. And then Bettina calls me today, and we talked about it. And I'm saying, so it's pretty obvious. And I'm just going to say this. It didn't work. It's not going to work. Okay. Right. Spiritually, mentally, physically, it's not going to work. It's not happening.
It's true. Because like you said, I've talked to Letitia about it, what happened there. And, on the outside, Brandy and I are kind of helping them too with that. So,
yeah. And it feeds on fear. It feeds on fear, and it hamstrings you by your fear. You can't lay there in fear. When I was a child, I laid in bed in fear of things like that because I would see them and I didn't want to see them. And I mastered that fear a long time ago, like to the point where when I was living in the house in South Austin, something came like the way my bedroom was, it kind of jutted out a little bit. And there was like this patio, and I heard it crunching through the leaves, and I knew it was a spirit. I knew it wasn't a person. And it came like right through the wall. And I was like half asleep, half awake, And so I woke up like fully, and I saw this being like standing there right there in my room. And I just told it to get out. I mean, it was like clear as day to me. It's like, I've had like several people come on my show that lived in that place, and they've talked about what's happened to them. My brother, him and my friend Willie, my friend Jerome, my friend Scorpion, we have nicknames, but they all saw these things. Like clear as day. They're just black shadows. Some of them look like apparitions of people. I got slapped by something on my back.
Wow.
Hey, Gary, what's going on? So there's all these different things that have happened, in that house. And so I was already prepared for it for years. So, this is nothing new. One of these individuals had reached out to me when I talked about it on the show when I first moved into that house, and we uncovered some things about the past of that house. And so kind of lends to it, but he had reached out to me, and thank God I didn't talk to him about it because I didn't trust it. But I know that this is about what's going on right now. But I'm not afraid. And if anybody out there is listening, you cannot be afraid. These beings, a lot of them, they're very, very low level. And the only reason that they're even messing with you is because they want energy, because they don't have it for themselves. So they're parasitic. people that send those and play with them, they're very weak people, because if you're playing around with that, that's the best you can do, is just play with that.
Right.
I mean, come on, dude. I mean, those are very low level bottom feeder entities. What you're dealing with basically is like a lineage that goes way back. And it's like, oh yeah, they're the Nephilim, whatever. They're the weakest entities, or they wouldn't even be messing with us. You're not going to get like archons, you know.
Right.
When you go and you do the conjuring stuff, you're not going to get an archon to come and help you.
Right.
That's not what this is.
And here's the thing too, Josh, you know, like, you know, people who put curses and things out on other people, they don't realize they're putting it right on themselves as well.
You paid the price. You have to pay.
Right.
There's nothing for free.
Right.
And then they'll, some of those people, though, like my sister has a friend. I'm going to mention her name. I'll call her. I don't even want to say her first letter of her name, because I don't even want to do that. She is a witch. And I don't even understand how she's even friends with this person still, because she tried to curse her.
Wow.
And they'll curse you over the most petty things. Now, this is brujeria we're talking about. And she cursed, and I was talking to her one day about what she does, you know, because she was there at my sister's house and it was Thanksgiving, and I'm like, I didn't want to be rude, but I really didn't like being around her. But I can't tell her, hey, this is whatever. But she was sitting right there, and so I'm just kind of like, you know, what do I talk to this person about, you know? And so when I started talking to her about what she does, because I wasn't real sure, you know, all I know about her is that she makes food and she sells it. And then she puts curses on people. Okay. So I asked her, I said, what do you do? And she said that one of the most common curses she gets are women coming to her to make men not be able to function correctly.
Wow.
That is like the most requested of, and it was very weird, because I was like, so you're basically like a partner with Viagra. Like you know, you do what you got to do. And then they go and they buy the blue pill so they can get it undone. Right. But she said, and you know, and so my sister has witnessed her do one of these, and she was just like, you know, I don't want to be here, you know.
Yeah.
But it was really bizarre, you know. It's like, and she's the real deal. She does this, and I know a couple people who ran afoul because of Solosa, you know, these jealous women that somebody does something, you know. It's not like the black dog. She's not putting the cadejo on people. Now that's some serious blood magic right there to conjure up something like that.
Yeah.
What she's doing is just, you know, putting a curse on somebody, and then something happens. But what the curse that these other people, what they're doing, I'm pretty sure it's like a sentinel. That's what they call it. And what they do is they get something to spy on you, and they can see through it, you know, so they can see what you're doing or whatever. But what they don't understand, though, is these sentinels lie too. And if they're not getting a better end of the bargain, they're going to give you bad information. They're going to lie to you, or they'll come back and just take a bite out of your ass, because that's how they are.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's really stupid to play with that, because they don't know what they're messing with, and they think they have some kind of control or power, or the bruja tells them, oh no, I got this. I've been doing this, you know, whatever, slinging the chicken bones and whatever else she's doing, but they have no idea what's really going to happen. Okay.
No.
So you're over there playing around with this stuff, and this is not, you know, and there's no such thing as like, oh, I'm just doing good, you know. It always leads into something else, because we're told over and over again from every holy book on earth not to mess with this stuff. Because it's like, if you mess with, that's like a Ouija board. If you go out in the woods and you conjure, or, you know, it's the same as going into deep sea fishing. I went deep sea fishing in Port Aransas, you know, one time, and down in Padre too. And when you're out there, you know, you think, oh, I'm going to try to get a marlin, and you get a blue shark. You don't know what you're going to get. You're out there, you reel it in, and you're like, this is not what I thought. Somebody caught a barracuda, and it was flopping around, and it cut somebody's leg open. And they were like, well, we didn't think that was going to happen. And I'm like, well, you really don't know what's going to happen, do you?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, really and truly, you know, I mean, you're just going to get what you're going to get. And sometimes when you think you're playing with one thing, something else comes on, and it's pretty bad. Like I talk about it in my book about the werewolf that appeared in the closet to a girl named Angelica. That thing showed up because she said, what did my stepdad Joe see? Well, it showed her what it saw, but it was an entity of some kind. Now, whether it was the actual creature itself or some sort of like some sort of projection, you know, it tried to come through the closet door. She had one of those double doors, you know, and there's like 3 teenage girls there screaming their heads off, freaking out. One of them fainted. Something happened to her that attached to her, because after that, they ended up having issues with that particular, that female had issues later on down the road, which
Wow.
we've talked about on the show. But when you play with stuff, and these are very foolish people that are messing with this stuff, and you know, and I always say, if you're going to do something stupid, I mean, why hire somebody else? I mean, you know, if you're so determined to do it yourself.
Right.
You know, if you're so tough and whatever. I mean, but you know, these things they're playing with, they're not going to like being rejected and being slammed and then sent back, because when they come back, they're going to demand their price, and that price is going to come in a way.
Yes.
I've had somebody who openly bragged about putting a curse on me, and then he ended up in a very bad situation, and I did nothing to this guy. Absolutely nothing. It was years ago when I was working downtown, and he bragged up and down the street about what he did. Something very bad happened to him, and I had nothing to do with it.
Right.
And then his cousin was like, she was all mad at me. I'm like, why are you mad at me? I didn't put the curse. I didn't throw it out there. I wasn't playing with that stuff. Yeah. There's a price to pay. Nothing is free. There's no free rent, no free lunches. Karma is, like they say, it's a biddy, you know, and it will boomerang back, and it will do what it does. I could tell you story after story of people that message me and tell me, and right with this situation going on here, I got about 30 people telling me, hey, this happened to me, blah, blah, blah. I mean, that's the price. Yeah. There's always a price. I mean, I don't care what it is. You'll pay. And some of these people, I guess they think that, you know, life's a free, you know, they don't work. So I mean, that shows you where the mentality's at. They're not working. So they probably think, well, everything's for free, huh? Socialism. That's great. Right. Because obviously, you know, if you have that mentality, then you're probably going to think the spirit world's the same way. The spirit world is not work on credit. I'm going to tell you right now. It is a straight up transaction back and forth. It's worse anything you can imagine in the flesh. Yeah. This is like a fake world compared to that. When you go ahead.
I was just going to say, you know, doing all this stuff that people are doing out there today, you know, I have seen true evil, and it's nothing I want to play with. You know, I mean, we don't go and do these haunted things for pleasure. You know, it's because people truly need help. And a lot of these things, you know, people obviously don't ask for, but when you willingly go out there and you do something like that, it is nothing I'd want to face because I chose to do it. Absolutely not.
No. And that's the thing too. Like, people ask me all the time why I don't do more investigations. I do, but also I don't think it's really something that needs to be glorified, because when I go out to do an investigation, I'm going there to visit someone. Not hey, there's a spooky building, and I heard from a friend of a friend of a friend's housekeeper's dog's babysitter, whatever, that there's something ghostly. That no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go and I'm going to talk to that person. If they're in this area within 100-mile radius, I'll sit down and talk to them, and that's the best way to do it. Or meet at a coffee shop or somewhere, and we'll talk to them. And that's how we got one of our best stories ever. Was what we talked to an officer, and we sat there and we sat from across from him, and you could see the panic in his eyes. You could see the fear in his eyes as he was reliving the story of what happened to him, you know? And so I took Christopher Clough and his wife out there to that spot and showed them. And they were like, this looks like where something would happen, you know? Yeah. And right next to it was on my first episode of the show, when it was me and Armando were he was my co-host. We got a story from a woman, and that was one of the first ones we covered, was right next door to where that guy had his incident. There was a goat man encounter right there. Now, I don't think that's a coincidence. And these were distinctly different things. And I've talked to that guy. He lives in Arizona now. And I've talked to him a few times. And I've talked to her one other time after that, because she had a ghost story to tell me. It was really her sister. But I try to keep touch with people, you know, because if somebody sees something once, they'll probably see it again. You know, there's so many people in this field, they just pick a niche and then they're like, well, I don't really want that. I just want this other story you told. Well, yeah, but that happened with it. Nah, but let's cut that out and let's make a narrative that makes this fit into the niche I'm in. So I don't do that. But this guy, he said there was no way that this was goat-like. And she said there was no way that this was wolf-like. So there's two different things going on there at the same time. That's not a coincidence to me. No. Everybody tries to argue with me. I had some ghost lady. I'm not going to get into who she is because I don't need more problems. But she's like, you don't have any business trying to come over here and cross-pollinate or some kind of crap, she said on one of the groups. And about 12 people checked her and said something to her. And she goes, I don't care who he is. Blah, 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 blah. You know? She's like, he doesn't know anything about ghosts. Blah, blah, blah. And I was like, that's actually my wheelhouse. Yeah. You know, the dog man thing, I saw it one time. It was a one-off, obviously, as Lyle always calls it, one-off. And, you know, it's very rare that you're going to see something again and again. People said, oh, he claims he's seen every cryptid. No, I haven't. No, I don't.
Mm-hmm.
When I saw what I thought was the black dogs, I was with 3 people. I'll give you their names. One of them was Jason Carr. The other guy's Oscar Howe. The other guy's Tony Duran. Tony Duran, I used to box with him. He sat right here across from me. He talked on that story. Black Hellhounds of Taylor, Texas. That really happened. My best friend, she's a chiropractor, name's Heather LaCasey, and she lived in the house in front of the house is where it happened, where we saw that creature. Now, those to me, I thought maybe they were physical. I don't think they were. I think they were spirits. Yeah. Do I think that this creature that I saw thought it was physical till 2019 when my friend's brother said that he saw a black vapor come off the back of its neck?
Wow,
now, what is that?
I mean, that last night. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know that. I mean, so when you hear that, then and we're standing in a haunted house when it happened, and the reason it even came up, he was showing me the house that he was remodeling because we were thinking about literally buying the piece of property right next door where my encounter happened. We were thinking about buying it.
Wow.
And so the owner was going to sell it for pretty cheap, and so we were talking to him about it, but there were some things that weren't correct. So I was like, nah, you know. Plus, it would be weird, you know. It would just be weird. Sure. And so we were in a house that was absolutely haunted. A man had killed himself years ago before I was even saw the dog man thing. It was always known as the haunted house on that street because a man had committed suicide. And I knew the guy. I knew that because his wife had left him, had cheated on him or whatever. And he went into a depression and he was drinking all the time. And he was in that house gone for a long time before they discovered him because he lived alone and didn't have anybody. And so one day, and it was very sad, but we were in that house and we hear bang, bang. And so we go into the master bedroom because we're talking and the floor was all pulled up. You know, there was all cement and there was 2 sawhorses that had fallen inward. Wow. Now, how does that even happen? The floor was pretty level. You know, it wasn't anything that should have happened. So, you know, Junior was like, he's like, you see what I'm talking about? And then I said, yeah. And he goes, this whole area is jacked up. And he starts talking to Anthony, my nephew, and he goes, yeah, just like that thing we saw back in, 1990 Halloween, and he remembered it. And we started talking about it. And of course he brings up the whole black vapor thing on the neck. And I'm sitting there going like, what? Like, right. I didn't know that. And so this was only a few years ago. And so, well, because when you're old like me, a few years ago is like a decade. You're like, oh, the other day, and it was like, 2010, right. Time flies. And right. Just like, my nephews, to them, the other day is literally Thursday. For me, it's 10 years ago. And I'm over there and I looked at Junior and I said, Junior, I was like, what are you talking about? And he says, there was like this vapor come off the back of its neck. Me and my mother saw it. I said, she was like my adopted mother. She was like my Martha. Right. And I said, Martha saw that? And he said, yeah, we were standing by the kitchen window. Remember when she screamed? I said, dude, I was in a daze at that point on the couch. It was like my head, everything was like, I was like underwater. Wow. And I told him, I said, I don't remember that. And he says, yeah, it was like this weird stuff come on the back of its neck. So we're driving home back to Austin, which is 30 miles, And I told Anthony, I said, did you hear what he said? And Anthony at that point was like, no, I got to pee real bad, dude. You just got to pull over. and literally, as I just sat there pondering it, he went in and used the bathroom, comes back out. And he's like, hey, okay, I heard what he said. He's like, is that something that you really had never? I said, I have never heard that. Never. So when I went back to my friend Daniel, and he's a preacher now in my hometown, and I said, did you see that? He goes, no, I did not see that. He goes, it looked flesh and blood. It looked very flesh and blood. And I said, it did to me too, because it moved the fence. But like Daniel said, though, he lived in a haunted house and he was doing spiritual warfare daily for like 2 years in this house he lived in. And he had cleansed it to the point where when you go over there, you didn't feel anything. But before that, when he first moved in, it was bad. It was real bad. I saw a shadow move through the hallway and I thought it was his son. And I'm like, and he's named after me. So I'm like, Josh. I'm like, Josh. And I'm like, oh, what is that? And I'm sitting there going like, okay, I just saw something move. So that's the kind of house he was living in, right? So I started talking to him and I said, and he makes tamales every year for Christmas. So it was, that same year, it was Christmas. It was like a week later after we had been over there with Junior. And he says, giving me the tamales, my wife standing right there. We're all standing there. And he's like, dude, I'd never heard that part. I was like, we never asked Junior what he saw.
Wow.
I mean, I'm over here telling this story like a also not even asking him what he saw. I should have asked. But I thought it was just relative, like this all the same. We all saw the same thing.
Yeah.
And when my brother, he asked Martha, Mama Martha, we call her, she was like my mom, and we asked her one day, because my brother liked to give me a hard time. He's like, you can't lift 700 pounds, which I never did, 660, but it's not 700. You're not as tough. So he's my older brother. He picked on me, even though I can beat him up, I always teased him, whatever. And he was very athletic when we were younger, he was in the Army and stuff like that. And he told me, he says, I don't believe your story. I don't believe you. He's just trying to mess with me, I'm like 21-year-old guy. I just come back from being somewhere, and he's like telling me, he's like, prove it to me. So we go over there, and I said, Mama Martha, Mama, can you tell him what happened to you that night? Just tell it from your perspective. She's like, I'm going to tell you one time. I don't like talking about it. El diablo. It's the devil. She said that, and she said, I saw it. She's like, a wolf, like a hombre lobo or hombre lobo, like a hungry wolf. It's like they say in Spanish, or man wolf. It's the same. It's two different things. How you say it, hombre or hombre. And she says, I saw this thing. And she talked about it. She didn't talk about what she saw in the window. She's like, what my husband and what he says are true. There's no mentiras. And so he was very like, okay, all right. So after we left, I said, you just wanted to hear the story from her. That's all it was. He was just, he was razzing me. And she's like, I did believe you. I just wanted to hear her tell it, Yeah. And so when we left, it was very sobering moment for us, like, hey, this is, And so my brother lived in Michigan. So when we started doing research, we started going the rabbit hole. Me and my brother started this together. We started doing all this together. Right. And my brother doesn't like all the drama and fighting and stuff like that, because he's one of those people who doesn't want to play around. Okay. Sure. He's not going to play around with all this back and forth, dude. He's not going to do that. He's not that guy. He's just going to wait for you to come or something. So I'm just like, whatever. So I just left him out of it. So me and him were talking the other day, and we made a map of the Devil's Backbone. That was our first little like paranormal thing we did. We went out there because we had an experience with what we thought was a hitchhiker. That was a hitchhiker, but it was a ghost. I mean, and we talk about it on our show. Right. And so we made a map. We started researching it. He's like, there's a lot of Dogman reports out there. And he was the first one that told me Dogman. I had never heard that. I didn't know what that was. And so the first thing I did was I looked up Dogman, and I came across Linda Godfrey. So I got in touch with her, and she corresponded back. She was a very nice, sweet person. Very nice person. And I ended up doing a couple of reports here in Texas, and I sent them to her. And then she did some research on them and actually talked to the people and got their stories. I said, that's cool. So I did a little field work with her. But then I ended up talking to Vic Cundiff. That's how I got in touch with Vic Cundiff, because I found Dogman Radio and whatever. Actually, my brother did. And he said, maybe you can go to this guy and put your story in. Right. And so I sat down and I typed in kind of what had happened to me. And he reached back to me, and and he's like, hey, Vic Cundiff, he talks. And so then I got in there and I told him my story, and he's like, man, I need you to come on the show and talk about it. Would you be willing to do that? And I was like, well, I hadn't really thought about it. I told him, I said, I have a notebook full of stuff that I've collected over the years. And I told him about me and my brother and one of my friends. He's now deceased, but we were all together and kind of like our own little team, because we were always getting stories for stuff. And so we talked to me and my brother, both talked to him, and he ended up, talking me into coming on the show. And I said, I have a lot more encounters that I've collected because of what happened to me. Yeah. And so then I just kept going back and I just did more and more, and I did more research, and people started reaching out to me because he was so slammed that he could only do one per week. So people were giving me their stories, and then I would just come on and retell them. And I worked with him, I was friends with him and worked for him for 5-6 years, And it's unfortunate, I know, because I looking back on it now, what had happened and what had transpired between me and him, I think this other guy was a part of that. And so when you knee-jerk react, that's what happens. Yeah. So absolutely. Me and him don't talk anymore, and it's unfortunate, but it is what it is, and where we are. But this situation with my brother, what we decided, we were going to start doing investigations, and Linda had said, start in your own backyard. Yeah. Like literally start in your own backyard. And so we did. We went around the area where we lived, and we got a ton of stories around there off of William Cannon in Austin, where we used to live. We even had the game warden come by one day because they found a hog ripped apart down by the railroad tracks. and they thought that somebody was shooting guns or something down there, but they couldn't find any bullets or bullet holes in this thing.
Wow.
So something ripped a hog apart, and then something ripped apart a deer. And so when the deer happened, that's when they were like, okay, this is in the city limits, but that area was very rural still. Like that street, if you walked up the road from what is now, if you go there on William Cannon and Menchaca, that's the Sprouts. But if you go down the road, you know, that from there to Westgate, it was all woods. And so one of our friends, Big Rob, he's a big dude. That's why we call him Big Rob. He was not a faint of heart guy. He's 6'5", big dude.
Yeah.
He worked security with me, and his car broke down. But his girlfriend Lola lived on the other side up the hill. So Rob was like trying to get me to give him a ride. I said, man, I'm going the opposite direction, man. I cannot do it. I would.
Great.
I would. And so I gave him the key to my spare vehicle. And so me and my brother took off to go to work, right? When you know it, my truck key, I gave him the wrong key. It was a vehicle I just sold. So he's like, you know, he's determined, you know, love girls, whatever, make guys go crazy. He'll do anything. So he goes and walks up that. And he always said that area was really creepy, but he walked through that area. Now, he didn't see anything, but he heard something. And then he goes, you know, there's something there. There's something there. So I walked through there with him one day. I didn't see a damn thing. I was like, I don't see. I'm sorry, I don't hear anything. And if there's something, it's probably a homeless person. But then he introduces me to a girl that was a friend of ours from the bar. And he said, tell her this. It was a girl named Melissa. And he said, tell him the story. Tell him the story. And I'm like, end of the night, I'm tired. I ran a nightclub, you know. And I'm like, what is this? You know, and she's like, I thought it was going to be like somebody harassed me, blah, 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 you know, because that's what happens all the time. Yeah. And she had just started working there, not a bartender, a bar hop. What do you call it? Goes to waitresses. So she tells me, she's like, I walked through there one night and I saw something. I got a glimpse of something that looked wolf-like, but I think it had horns. And I was like, I didn't believe that. I was like, no, that doesn't make any sense. So I kind of, you know, early on in the years of investigating and stuff, I didn't believe it. I'm like, what is that? And then, you know, it's kind of on par with, like, I made mistakes because I wasn't doing what I'm doing now. So I'm just like, I don't know about that, you know? And then my friend Samantha, who worked for us, her best friend gave us a story. And it was me and Arash. He's in my book. He owns a club called Spinners. And he was the bar manager. And so he tells me, he goes, I have a female friend of ours that, you know, and I didn't know her. I met her through him and Sam. And so one night after hours, we sat there and I was trying to get the story, but people were smoking and it was blowing all over me. And I kept having to get up and, you know, I don't like the smoke. And so finally I just said, look, give me a call. We'll talk, whatever. So if you wanted to tell me the next day, and she's like, are you writing a book? I'm like, I'm thinking about it. I didn't at that time. I just was like, I thought I would. And so she starts telling me that she saw this thing that looked like the Wolfman on the other side, like 2 streets behind where we lived.
Wow.
Right. And but like I said, it's very rural still, you know, but it's like the city, but it's their spores everywhere.
Yeah.
And Austin's built like that, you know? So she tells me, she says, I saw something. She's like, you remember that movie, Benicio del Toro? I said, yeah, I know the movie. Yeah. And she's like, something like that, but with horns.
Yeah.
I said, did it have hooves? She's like, I don't think so. It had the backward bent legs. And she's like, and it growled like a wolf. And it had like a really short muzzle. And then a few years go by, and Arash it's called Ditmar, that street right there. He's driving down it, and he sees this thing bent over, literally eating something which he thought looked like a body. Because there's a lot of homeless people that camp around there, right? Yeah. And now we get stories all the time from homeless people that claim they see these werewolf-looking creatures, and they actually snatch people up. That's what they tell us. They tell us that all the time. How much validity to that there is, I don't know. But we've had people just, like, tell us straight up. I've talked about it on the show. Like, and I'm talking 4 or 5 of us, and they'll tell us straight up to our faces that they saw something happen. But how do you report that? Do you go to the police and say, hey, my friend just got snatched up by a werewolf. An 8-foot-tall werewolf came at our camp and took somebody.
Yeah. Wow.
They're going to look at you and think you just
like
killed
you're crazy.
That person. Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah.
We do have to take a 5-minute break. We stream with Anne Selene, KPNL Radio.
Yeah, tell her no, we're not taking a break. She's a friend of mine. She'll know. She understands. She owes me a favor. Tell her no, we're not doing.
Yeah,
I'm joking. I'm joking, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, just so for her advertisers. So we do have to do that.
Yeah, we got to pay the bills, as we say. So we got to take a 5-minute break every hour, but no big deal.
Yeah,
okay.
No big deal.
Good time to get your snacks.
Yeah, that's what I tell everybody. Get your snacks, go to the restroom, and be back. So if everybody just stick with us, and we'll be back in 5 minutes. and stay tuned.
Perfect.
Back. Appreciate everybody sticking around with us. And real quick shout out to Titan. We definitely appreciate that. So
What's going on?
Yeah, let's just jump right back into it.
4-1. Oh man. So they're winning, huh? I was checking out the game, the ball game. My Rangers are down, man. I was hoping that they'd win, so we'd have the Astros 1 year, Rangers the next. But
Gotcha. Understand that. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, well, I'm kind of a Chiefs fan just because I'm over here in
yeah, because you're like Missouri, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
I used to like the Chiefs until recently. Until they started winning all the time.
Right.
I liked them back. I wanted them to win that first Super Bowl. I was so glad they actually won. I was like, and they beat the Niners, who I despise, but I was like so happy. But then they just got carried away with it. And it wasn't that, it's not them. It's some of the fans are very obnoxious. I mean,
I agree.
well, I
And
think
now-
what it is I have a friend that works for me, Big Jim. He's probably watching right now. Big Jim, if you're there, you're an obnoxious Chiefs fan. You're very obnoxious. You know, you rubs it in all the time. Cowboys, another year, no Super Bowl.
Right.
The league don't like us. They don't like Texas. I'm telling you.
Right.
They don't
Absolutely.
like Florida either. They don't like Florida. They hate it when the Bucks won.
Well, and the Chiefs fans just got worse now because Travis Kelce is dating Taylor Swift. So that just threw everything out.
That's another thing. That's all that right there.
Yeah.
The Bucks, when the Bucks won, though, I took $20 from Gin Gerhardt, and he was like, "There's no way they're going to beat my Packers." I'm like, "Gosh, I knew they were. It was a team of destiny. I knew they were going to win."
Right. Before we continue, I heard you announce the other night that you have another conference you're going to be doing.
Yes.
Anything you care or can talk about briefly?
No, not really.
No.
Because I got to talk with some friends, and
Sure.
as you know, Ann
Right.
is Ken's. And
Yep.
Ken and me we both were just like, because Lyle asked us at the end of this, he's like, "Did you think another successful conference?" And Ken goes, "Yeah, me and Wolf went through hell for another successful conference." And Lyle's like, "Well, y'all have fun with that, you know." So I was talking to David the other day. David called me. David Weather, he's a very good friend of mine. He's literally like my neighbor. Like he lives 20 minutes from me, probably 30 maybe at the most. The traffic. And so I think we were, it was either a phone call or we were eating dinner, but we were talking about it. And he said, "Are we going to do it again?" I said, come on, man. I love David. I said, "Okay, this time I'm going to put it on you. You're going to help me build we're going to do it in Austin." And he said, "Great, let's do it." He goes, "I'm behind you." He's like, "If you do it," because he's the one that originally told me. I was on the phone and I had just got the phone with Barton. And it was this whole thing that was going on with one of y'all's friends that we're not talking, whatever. And it was this thing that this woman was harassing Linda. Okay, so I had to get on the phone, and I had just gotten off the phone with somebody, and it was Barton and Nick Valenti. Y'all know Nick Valenti, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
So we got on the phone, and then me and David get on the phone. He was trying to tell me something about this person that was harassing Linda. Linda was going through Parkinson's. She didn't need to go through that. That's wrong.
Right.
And so there was a bunch of friction happening with this organization, you know, and so Jody did the right thing. He replaced the person that was causing the problems with this other person that ended up causing problems. I guess you can't win for losing, but so the situation, David gets on the phone and just kind of throws it out there. He's like, "Why don't you do a conference?" Like just out of the blue. Like you were talking about the situation.
Yeah.
You know, and I was getting ready to go to Mineola, and I was gonna be at that conference with Ken and Gerhard, Lyle Blackburn, and Nick Redford.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a deal with somebody. We had made an action figure line. I don't know if you remember that.
Yep.
And so we ended up selling all these prototypes, and you know, and just it didn't materialize because the person doing the sculpting, God bless him, he needed money, so he just started making them for everybody.
Yeah.
Next thing you know, I saw Shannon LeGros had one, and you know, Derek Mays had one. I'm like, "Where'd you get those?" "I got them from Charlie." I'm like,
Right.
so that didn't work, you know, and God bless them too. I don't have a problem with any of those people. They're great people. I like Shannon. I like Derek. Not nothing to get, no bad blood there at all. But I was like, dude, you know, everybody's got an action figure, and I thought we had a deal, which we did. So at Mineola, it kind of came to the head, and David was like, you need to do a conference. So I was there, and Tex and Jason were there. That's where I met them. That's where I met Craig Woolheater too, was at that conference. So we all went to dinner, and we had a great time, and I hung out with Nick Redfern. And it's not the first time I hung out with Nick, but I got to hang out with all those guys. And so I just said, you know what, we're going to do a conference. We're going to do and Tex is like, well, that's great. You know, where's it going to be at? And I'm like, it's in Tennessee. And he's like, wow, it's a long ways.
Yeah.
I said, well, I mean, that's what we're thinking about doing. So then Ken and me took, you know, we just decided, hey, that's what we're going to do. Now, here's a funny thing. When me and Ken, different conversations, when we talked to the people who ran the conference center, they told us a couple stories of black cats and weird stuff. They believe full on in the beast of the LBL.
Yep.
They believe that's a real thing. It's not a joke to them. It's not a game.
Right.
People that live there believe that it's a real thing. And one guy had told us his son saw it.
Yeah.
Me and Ken, you know, we had, you know, so then this last one, Ken was like, I guess we lost Brandy, huh?
Yeah. Weather gets bad for her and she'll come in and out.
Yeah. But so Ken had said that he wanted to do it closer to home. And I was like, dude, you read my mind. I was like, I don't want to do it way far flung somewhere far off.
Yeah.
It was too much hassle, you know. And, I ended up having to stay a night in a hotel because everybody had slept over at Lyle's house the night before, and we went to Fort Worth. So we didn't have to drive all the way from Austin. It was Fort Worth. And then the next day, we drove up. So Lyle rode with us. And it was such a long drive, and we were on the way back, and Lyle was like, yeah, if we do it again, we should do it somewhere close by. And I was like, how about your backyard? How about Fort Worth?
Yeah.
And so we talked about it, and then I said, you know what, I'm done, man. I don't want to do this. And I didn't want to do the podcasting anymore. And I'm going to tell you right now, and I'm saying this with all honesty, I had made up my mind that after that conference, it was going to be a success. I wanted to write.
Yeah.
And then Lyle had kind of fueled that by telling me all about writing and what it was and everything else. And I was just like, that's what I need to do. I need to do that. And I wanted to do it. I wanted to write. And so I was like, you know what, I'm going to write a book. I'm going to write a book. And then Lyle, I didn't know this, but Lyle Blackburn's actually an English major.
Wow.
And so we were talking, and he was telling me his whole, he's a hell of a musician. Actually, he's playing, I think right now as we speak, he's like in Greenville, South Carolina.
Wow.
With, I think it's his band. What's it called? Ghoultown.
Yeah.
And so I missed him this past week because I had a bunch of stuff going on. He was here in Austin. It's unfortunate. But we were talking, and he says, man, if you're going to, he goes, I know you can write a book. He's like, you're very smart. He goes, even when you text and type to me, he's like, you don't, it's not a lot of grammatical errors or anything like that. You're a pretty intelligent guy. He's like, but you were born for podcasting. You were born to do that. And so here's the funny thing. Lyle kind of talked me into staying in the podcast game. And then it's kind of weird because I think I talked him. Well, I'm pretty sure I talked him into becoming a podcaster.
Wow.
Because we talked back and forth, and Lyle, I told Lyle, I said, you should be a podcast. You have a hell of a voice. Everybody likes your voice. I mean, you got a voice. You sing. Yeah, you have a band,
Yeah.
And so he was like, you really think? I said, yeah. I said, dude, you don't have to do it all the time. Do once every 2 weeks.
Right.
So he does about once a month, whatever. And he does a hell of a job.
Yeah.
It is a great job. And there's a lot of great podcasters out there. He's one of them. Chris Garitano. He's another one. Off to the Witch. I like him. I'm giving him a plug. He's good.
Yeah.
The guy said earlier, Derek. I mean, these people, Derek's not. I don't know Derek personally, but they do a good job. They do.
Yeah.
There's so many good podcasters and YouTubers out there, and these people, they waste their time with these people are not worth a darn.
Right.
And you're going like, life is too short to listen to bad music and listen to bad podcasters.
Agreed.
You got to listen to what's good. You're going to go into your garden. You're not going to pick the fruit that's rotten. Why would you eat that? It's a rotten tomato. I'm not going to eat that.
Right.
That's how I feel. I feel like there's so much good out there. Why waste your time? You guys do a good job. I think Tex does a good job. Jason.
Yeah.
I like Doug Hychek. Anything he does is pretty good.
Yeah. And that's the thing too, like with you guys and us, our numbers are real.
Yeah.
Social black. I'm sorry, I have a dog barking. Sorry.
What kind of dog is it?
I have 3 dogs. Hush, Grandma. I have an English Mastiff.
I used to have an English Mastiff.
And he's my heart. And then the little one that's barking is he's part poodle and part Australian Shepherd. He's a funny looking thing.
Yeah.
So I apologize for that.
Yeah,
Well,
that's why I don't do it from home. I have a study, and people tell me, well, you know what? My wife was like, you can make this into the studio. And I'm like, no, because if I did that, then we have a pig. We have dogs, cats, we have birds, we have fish, we have ferrets, we have guinea pigs, and we have a pig, and then we have the rabbits. And so, it's a zoo. And I told her, I said, honey, you have so many animals that they would.
A zoo.
when I'm in the study, there's 8 animals sitting right there trying to get in my door. And my black cat, Martis, I named him after Scott Martis, the guy he was the Lake Champlain investigator, good friend of mine. He was on my show. We did about water cryptids. And he's a little black cat, smart as hell. And he jumps up and he unlocks that because the door handle is one of those kind of like it comes off to the side, like it, it sticks out. I don't know how to explain it. It's like goes like that. It's not a doorknob, and he's figured out how to push that up. And he can open it. He'll walk in. So he'll just come in my study. If I don't lock the door, he'll come in. And he'll let all the other animals in. Next thing you know, Truffles, my pig, is underneath me. And he'll just be making noise. So when I go in there, I have to close the door and then tell somebody, hey, can you get the herd? Because the herd is right there waiting to come in.
Right. And that's me. I have kids coming in and Door opens, the dogs bark. So I apologize to everybody.
Oh, yeah,
Well,
you got to do what you got to do.
Yeah.
yeah. Well, the one dog's bigger than she is.
The
Yeah.
Mastiff, huh?
So,
Yeah. He's a big
yeah.
boy.
So when he rubs up on her, and lays on her, it kind of pushes her off. You got to watch it so you don't fall out of the chair.
Yeah, my Mastiff was 140 pounds. His head was like this. His name is Ivan. He lived for 15 years.
Wow.
The
And that's rare for a
Wow.
Mastiff.
hip dysplasia is a big problem with him. I quit walking him when he was eight or nine. I quit walking him because you walk at that point, you're not helping him.
No.
And I used to grind up glucosamine, chondroitin, and MSM, and I gave him those as a supplement every day. And if he see me doing it, he was smart. He'd be like this, and I'd have to turn my back to him, and I'd be like, "Dude, what are you doing?" And he'd be watching me, and then he didn't like it. So I'd mix it into the wet dog food with him, and I'd have to give it to him twice a day. The veterinarian, a great guy and James, he was a really good guy from A&M. And so I'd have to put it in his food, and he'd look at me, and he'd look at me like, you better not put something in there. He was so smart. I'm telling you, I miss him every day. I miss that dog. He was the best dog. There were 2 dogs in my life. I remember, I'd say 3, and I've had tons of dogs. I love dogs. I'm an animal person, but he was top 2.
Yeah.
My dogs, Rosie and Pumpkin, they're the only dogs that could even come close to that dog. That dog was like special. I trained him, and I used him to train other dogs. And he was trained by my friend Alex Sanchez and my friend Roger, who's now deceased. His son Alec was at the conference. You might have met him. He was taking pictures the whole time.
Yeah.
Roger was his dad. That was him and Roger's dog.
Wow.
But they gave it to me when they moved, and he was real young when I got him, like not even a year. And he was tearing up everything, and he needed somebody strong, and Roger was always working. And so I could give him more attention. So I took him to work with me. And another dog named Guardian that was half massive, beautiful dog. Alex Sanchez, still a friend. He's a private investigator, good friend of mine. Shout out to him. Worked with us for a while, off and on for years, actually. Guardian, that dog was Mastiff and Rottweiler. And he actually, we used him to train Ivan. Then Ivan trained the other dogs. And then there was another one named Frenzy, who was and my friend, he's a cop now up in West Virginia, but he trained, his dog was a Belgian Malinois. And he was, those dogs were very, very well, and I've seen them do some amazing things. And Ivan was so smart. He watched the other dogs do stuff, and he would just go do it. Like, we didn't have to do much training with him. Like Guardian and Frenzy taught him, how to do what you needed to do. So whenever somebody would come over or something, he would always position himself between me and them. We've always had Mastiffs. We had another one named Napoleon, which is funny because Napoleon was supposedly little. He actually wasn't, but they say he was little. But this dog was he had a complex.
Right.
He was aggressive, hyper aggressive, too aggressive for me. I didn't really like the way he acted. He would bully the puppies, and I was like, no, we can't have that. But he was really another good dog.
Yeah. I've had English Mastiffs for probably the last 25 years, and they've always been my dog of choice. They're just gentle giants. And
until somebody comes in and tries to touch you, then they rip them.
Yeah.
That's what they're for. That's what they're for, because they were bred that way. You know what they are? The Spanish Mastin. It was an Iberian Celtic dog that literally was bred from an ancient Roman dog that no longer exists anymore, and they crossbred them. And now we owe Marcus Aurelius that, because Marcus Aurelius instituted a breeding program with the Roman soldiers along with these dogs, because they were bogged down fighting in Trier, Germany. Right. And so he's like, dude, the Germans are 6 foot tall. They're the Teutons, and the Vandals, they were all just huge people. And he's like, people are, and the average Roman soldier was 5'5".
Wow.
So you can imagine the fear that the German soldier instilled in these people. And then, of course, Austria is Trier is Austria now. But if you look at it, those countries, it's an in-between country. It's kind of like northern Italy mixed with southern Germany. And then you have these giant people, right? And then, so the Romans are like, these are massive people, and then they had these humongous dogs, and fighting the Celts. I mean, like Caesar against the Gauls. The Gauls, they were crazy. They would paint themselves blue. They'd run around nude. They'd throw spears through you. They were nuts. Yeah. They and their women were nuts. They were crazy. If you look at Queen Boudica, I mean, like, she was a badass. I mean, I don't give a lot of credit when they try to say, well, this person did this person did that, because in our society now they make stuff up to make it fit a narrative. But no, she was a badass. She really was, and she fought Roman soldiers just like the men did. I mean, these were like Vercingetorix, you had these big, tall, strong people. So the Iberian Celts, it was one of the first holdings that the Romans had, that Transalpine Gaul. So they hadn't conquered the Gauls at that time. So what they did was they had the peninsula of Iberia, which is now Spain. At that time, it was Iberian Celts, and there wasn't a Moorish invasion yet to create what we know of today as a Spaniard. My mother is part Spaniard. So what I have in my veins literally is a hybrid and another hybrid that became a solidified race that became what I am. But when you look at what there was there, it was just Iberian Celts. There was no Moors. There was no Arabic, Berber, none of that. And so those people, when they lived in Spain, it was called Hispaniola, you know. And the only connection they had, and now they say Latin this and Latin that, that's a loose connection to Italy, because the Italians, you know, the Romans, you know, in the greater area around Rome became Latin. They weren't Roman, they were Latin, and they were enslaved to the Etruscans for like 200 years. The Etruscans no longer exist because the Latins destroyed them, because they lorded over them. And of course, the Latins, you know, their capital became Rome. The Latins existed as a people before it was a language, and it was before it was Rome. It was actually, you know, they were a people, and then Rome became their capital. It was the capital of the Etruscans. And then, of course, they ended up, you know, eventually going to Iberia. And when they interbred with the Iberian Celts, they became another thing, you know, something else. But it was actually a program that was pushed by Marcus. What he did was he gave the men all like extra coin and a little bit of land, and he said, if you go to Iberia, you know, in 20 years, he said, we'll have a whole new generation. He was doing it for Rome. He really wanted to see Rome succeed. He really cared. He was an emperor that cared about Rome. And so he says, I within 20 years, he's like, I may be gone, but there will be a breeding program. And these men can't bring their wives. They have to be single. So they would take local Iberian Celtic women and breed with them. And it's funny because like somebody was making a joke about it. And we were in history class and when I was in college. And this guy says, so the women were probably taller than the men. He said, and I said, yeah, they probably were, because the Celts were a few inches taller. Now the Germans were tall and massive. They were big people. And so when they were fighting and bogged down in this war, now if you watch that movie Gladiator, that movie at the beginning of it, now it's a fictional movie, but at the beginning of it, that's Marcus Aurelius. He was there, and that was Trier, that was Germany, and that was in southern Germany, and they were fighting on the border, and you could see that they were on the verge of winning the war, but these big German people came out swinging axes and stuff. That's not an exaggeration. And imagine what the first Romans saw when they were there. They were like, what in the hell is this? I mean, these are barbarians to the 10th, 9th degree, whatever, nth degree. That was why they had to have these Iberian Celts that they had already kind of subdued. It was one of their first holdings. Yeah. And the only reason that it became what it was because of Hannibal Barca. And I could go on and on and on, but that's not what this is about. But anyway, Hannibal, he went through there and he gathered up an army, and the Romans were like, where did they come from? From this region called, you know, Transalpine Gaul. And, well, we need to go kick their ass because we don't want them coming over here again. So the Romans went over there after the Second Punic War, and they defeated Hannibal when Scipio Africanus defeated him in Zama. And then he says, we're going to defeat these people, because we can't have them doing this again. You know, they've come at us too many times. And then it just became a holding, and it was one of the first provinces of Rome. And then from there it was, you know, Britain. And of course it just went on and on and on. And eventually, you know, Julius Caesar, he conquered the Gauls, which is France, you know, which is modern day France. And then of course the Moorish invasion came, and Francis Martel defeated the Arabs after hundreds of years of occupation. When the Spaniards first came to the New World, the people here in the New World, they had no clue what they were dealing with. The Spaniards were Europe's perfect killing machine. They had been fighting for centuries. And so the land where these people were, it was very rocky. The terrain wasn't good. And so the king said, hey, you know, he's like, you want something? Go fight for it. Yeah. I'll send you to the New World, and you can go and fight savage people and whatever, and kill animals, whatever you got to do. And then you could be the aristocracy over there. The word Spaniard is actually not, it's literally a French word that was coined by Francis Martel, the hammer, they called him. And he called them his Spanish bastards. because they were, they were mixed breeds. And that's what he called them. It's not politically correct, but I mean, people call me a half-breed, but I mean, sir, that's what they are. That's what they were. He said they fight like hell. And they, with the help of the Gauls, which became the Franks, which became the French, them and the Spanish drove out the Moors. They drove them out, and they drove Islam from the continent of Europe. And then later on at the Siege of Vienna, the heroes were the Spaniards again, them and the Swedish pikemen. If it wasn't for them, those two groups, we'd be speaking, Arabic. Yeah. And I guarantee you. And now, even now, there's words like pantalon and camarón. All those words, those are actually Arabic words. Wow. When I worked with Arabs for years, I've worked with Arabs, and I learned, and I've worked with Israelis and I've worked with Arabs both, at different times. And when I worked with the Arabs, I learned a lot of French because a lot of them spoke French, and they were Lebanese and they were from Ivory Coast, but they spoke like 4 different dialects. And of course, everybody speaks more languages than we do. I speak 6, but not fluently. But these people had taught me about the history of some of this stuff and what and they even have comic books. There's one called it's called Asterix and I can't remember the name. There's 2 little comic book guys, but they're Gauls, and it's a French comic. And these Arabs, they had these little comic books, and they would show me. And these Gauls, they would beat up the Roman soldiers. They were always like beating them up and getting away with it and pulling hijinks on them, Right. But that's I forgot the name of it. It's Asterix and Getterix, something like that. But anyway, they taught me a little bit about the history, so I became intrigued. So I went back and I read about it, And when you realize that the way that Spain, all the way up into southern France, the whole countryside, these cathedrals and everything, that's an Arabic influence there. Wow. And really, most of the people that invaded, the Moors that invaded, were actually Berber, and they were actually Arabs that the Arabs had subdued them, and they were North Africans. There weren't Arabs in North Africa until the 600s. People don't know that. They weren't indigenous there. The Berbers were, and the Berbers were the Bedouins. And whenever they were conquered by the Arabs, they spread Islam by the sword. That's what they did, because they were told by Muhammad to fight the non-believers that are near to you. And I have a friend of mine, he works for me, and bless his heart, we argue all the time about, we talk about the Jin and different things. And he always tells me, oh, I'm going to pray for you, my brother. And I'm like, pray to who? Because he's got his belief and I got my belief. Right. And he always says, well, I'm going to peace be upon you, And then he tells me all the time, well, Islam is peaceful and this and that. And I said, to some people, but to others, it's not. It depends, because he did say, fight the non-believers who are near to you. He goes, no, we don't do that. I said, once you've subdued them, you don't. Right. Right. That's why the Crusades happen. And everybody's always like down on the Crusaders. They're like, oh, the Crusades. And then there was an argument about the Templars. I'm going to set that straight too. Not all Crusaders were Templars, but all Templars were Crusaders. So there's that. Gotcha. Because I put that on my profile. Everybody's like, that's a Templar. And then, of course, this other group of clowns, they're like, we told you he was some sort of Masonic Satanist, some kind of something or another. And I'm like, do you even know what that is? That's a Crusader. Right. Okay. Templars were a type of Crusader. Now, there was a lot of different types of Crusaders. There were a lot of them. And they all came from all over Europe. And most of them were soldiers of fortune. They didn't really do it for any other reason than to, like some of the Spaniards that went to the New World, and conquered. They didn't have any, whatever. But I'll give you a little bit of paranormal here with this, since that's what we're supposed to be talking about here. I talked to somebody recently, and she was from Spain, and she was Berber. And she gave me, she tried to sell me cologne, what it was. And I was at the mall, and my wife's really good friends with one of the Turkish ladies that works there. And this lady was new, and they had moved their stand to another spot. And then this lady's trying to sell me the cologne or whatever. And I could tell by her accent, the way she looked. And I said, where are you from? And she's like, she told me, she's like, Africa. But she wasn't black. She was Saharan. And I said, you're Berber. Let me guess, Tunisia, Morocco, just Tunisia. I said, I got it on the first try. And she was like, because I do that a lot. And so my family, my friends are always like, they think it's cool because I can tell you when I talk to someone, I can tell whether they're Serbian or Croatian. I can tell the difference. And so when I talked to her and I said, where are you from? And she told me, and then we hit it off. And so I gave her my business card, nothing happened. And like maybe 2 or 3 weeks go by, and then I get a message from somebody, and her name is really hard to pronounce. So I'll just call her Selly. But she put on there, I got the Jin story for you. So if you guys want to hear this one, this is pretty good. Now, this one I decided, I was like, you know what, I'll save this one for Halloween. But we did the Halloween show, and I didn't tell this one. And so Chris Clough was there sitting across from me. He's in the next room right now. Chris, I know you're listening, but I told you I was going to tell this story. I'm going to tell her right now. So what happened was she was married to she met a guy in college when she was in college, and he was from Iraq. Now after the war in Iraq, and now people don't understand that. They don't understand what Iraqis are. I'll tell you this, there's 4 distinct languages there, 7 different types of Iraqis. As far as majority goes, there's about 11 different types of people. So you got about 4 that are the majority, right? But you got several different dialects. Now the difference, and I'll tell you this, folks, if you talk to somebody from Iraq, they say, Kifuk. That's what they say. Now, if you talk to someone from Lebanon, you tell them, Kifatak Habibi, Kifuk. That's a different, and you kind of reinforce it by saying Kifuk, because if you just say Habibi, it means my love. And so it's kind of weird. You know what I mean? It's like that verse that Anthony's talked about. Yeah. There's a verse in where the meek inherit the earth. You know that passage in the Bible?
Yep.
When the word meek in Greek actually means like war horse.
Wow.
And people don't know that. They think it's a mild, meek person that's going to know. It's the spiritually strong war horse that inherits the earth. People don't understand that. They don't know Greek. They don't know Aramaic. Most people don't. I understand. But anyways, we talk. That's how you talk. And that's a different dialect. But her husband, she said we could barely communicate. It was funny what she was telling me. She's like, it's not like, we all just speak English. They speak different dialects of Arabic. Right. So anyways, she says she's like, I liked him. I thought he was cool. And he asked me, he didn't even know where she was from. He thought she was Syrian. And she was like, no, not Syrian, not from the Levant. The Levant is a region. And I'll tell you what that is. When I talk about it on the show, it's Lebanon, Israel, Syria, Jordan, the southern part of Iraq, Syria, and that is the Levant right there. Okay. Not Iran, and nothing that goes up further like Afghanistan. That is not those are not the Levant, and the North African region is not the Levant. Now you could throw part of Egypt in there. I would say the Fertile Crescent, whatever, to the east. That is the Levant. Okay. But she's like, no, I'm not Levantian. That's, no, I'm from North Africa. Then he knew, he was like, because a lot of Arabs know what that is. It's, you're Berber. Berbers, they were the tribes people that lived, the Bedouins. They weren't Arabs. It's completely different people genetically. But a lot of them are Islamic, right? Yeah. So where she was from would have been at one time, we were talking earlier about Hannibal and Carthage, right? That would have been Carthaginians, and they had a belief in fire spirits, and they were fire worshipers, and they actually sacrificed people to these fire spirits. Now in Islam, they talk about this, but it is an Arabic belief, not an Islamic belief. The Arabic belief in the jinn predates the Book of Islam. Book of Islam, 600 AD, that's when it came into being. I'm going to tell you something. People don't understand this. They don't know this, okay? There were 272 gods, depending upon which region of the Levant you were from. Yeah. Okay. And Allah was the moon god. He was known as the moon god. Now they use a lunar calendar, and I always argue with my 2 Muslim friends that work for me, and I always tell them, I said, he's the moon god. They're like, no, my friend. I'm like, yes, because you're using a lunar calendar. That's why they're Ramadan, right? That's why Ramadan always falls on a different because they're following the lunar calendar, not following a solar calendar like we do. It would be the same month every year, right? So that's not. It changes. So this story she got, she's like, this is my husband's story from Iraq, and she's got a couple of really pretty good ones. This one here happened to him when he was a child. Okay, now in where he's from in that region, you got to understand where they're from. They've been at war for a long time. This was during the Iraqi-Iran war. Okay, now you got to know something. The Iraqis were technically Babylonian, right? Mm-hmm. That's the Mesopotamian, Babylonian, all the way back to the Sumerians. And I'll tell you something interesting about that in a minute, too. The Iranians are Persian. Now, the Persians, you might know them from the movie 300. Like those were the Persians, Xerxes and all that. Yep. Those were Iranians. But they were called the 100-Nation Empire, not 1,000 nations, 100, because they conquered everybody and kicked everybody's butt. And then the Greeks stopped them. The Spartans. But, here's the thing. When the war was going on and the Ayatollah was sending people in to die, basically to use humans as to blow up the landmines. And Saddam Hussein was actually in power, and he was being backed by our country to fight the Ayatollah, because Khomeini was, he was pretty wild. And so he had deposed the Shah and all that, and there was this radical Islam that had taken over. When they were using these people as human bomb, to blow up these landmines, that the Republican Guard had gone there, and they had laid out these landmines. Horrible, horrible story. They took his brother, and they made him walk through the landmines to see, how it would work, where they, and they were just using him as a test, Yeah. And he survived. So he gets to the other side, and he's too scared to come back, and they just left. They're like, well, you're on your own now, kid. Goodbye. And so they took off, and they left him like 2 miles, away across a minefield. Mm-hmm. So in the middle of the night when he was there, and this is her husband's brother, older brother. His name was Selene. He was there by himself in the middle of the night, and he hears this hooping and hollering and whatever, and he thinks it's the Iranians coming to fight. But he doesn't hear tanks. He doesn't hear any guns, soldiers, nothing. And so he thought, okay, these are people that the Iranians are sending to walk across these landmines and blow them up and detonate them so that it'll save their soldiers from it. So he's sitting there, and he's like, he's terrified. He knows he shouldn't be out in the middle of the desert by himself at night, but he's scared to walk back because, hell, he's going to blow up. So He's scared to death. And of course, his mother and his dad decided that they packed some bread, and they were going to walk the 2 miles or whatever to go get him. So this is a horrible thing, because you don't know if you're going to die, you're going to live, whatever. Sure. But these are what dictators do. They don't give a crap. They don't care if you live or die. You're just like a chicken, like Santa Anna, the general from Mexico. He says, my soldiers are like so many chickens. I don't care. I throw them at you. Right. You have 120 people at the Alamo. I have 10,000. Who cares? Right. Well, so he's there by himself, and he hears the sound of hooves, like horses. Wow. And then these three figures began to circle around him, riding around in a circle, and he's looking at them, and they're dressed all in black, so he thought they were Bedouins. And in fact, he thought they might have been Kurdish. And then the way they looked, he thought they might have been Yazidi. Mm-hmm. And that's a whole nother ball of wax right there. The Yazidi believe in the peacock god, and they are known to be like sorcerers. And the other Middle Eastern people kind of avoid them because they believe that they worship the devil, because they kind of do in the sense of what we think of as the devil. Yeah. So these guys were running around in circles around him in horses, and then he goes, dude, he started to pray, and he started to read, the only thing he knew from the Quran. And he said his brother was a bad kid. He didn't like to go to Jama'ah, which is like, that's their version of church, whatever. And he was like not going to any kind of anything. He wasn't into it. He didn't believe in it. And his parents, he was like 18-year-old kid, or 17-year-old kid. And his parents were like, when you turn, 20, whatever it is, you need to leave the house. We can't deal with you. And so because of the way he was, his neighbors were the ones that kind of gave him up and said, hey, this kid's a bully. He's a turd. Take him and walk him out there. That's why he ended up out there. So these guys were riding around on horses, and they began to turn into like a black mist. And then there were three of them. And ultimately they kind of melded together from the way that it was typed to me, turning into like a green glowing ball. And he knew that this was a jinn. Wow. He knew it was a jinn. But according to this story, not all jinn are bad. Now there's good and there's bad, there's evil, and there's everything in between. And they even have religions, like according to the Arabic belief, they have societies. They believe that some of them are Christian, some of them are even Jewish, some of them are, Islamic, and some of them have no belief. And he said that one by one, this jinn was like bouncing up and down on the ground, and it was detonating these bombs. Boom, 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 boom. Wow. Until he knew that whole area was clear. So then he began to walk behind this ball, and he would stay his distance from it because these bombs were going off, these IEDs. And so whenever these things were blowing up, he just kept walking behind them, keeping his distance. And eventually this thing turned, and it floated, and it went back to the other side. And then right out of that green ball, these three horsemen dropped out of it again. And one of them rode around him in a circle holding a scale.
Wow.
And it told him in Arabic, it was like, be not afraid. But it told him is like, be prepared.
Wow.
And then it took off. And he took it as a sign that he needed to get himself back right with God, and he needed to do what needed to be done. He said their eyes glowed green. And he walked back across, and his mother and his dad were there with bread, and they saw the bombs going off, and they just knew that he was going to be dead. And then after that, now he became a cleric. Like he's like, he leads, but that's a crazy story. Like, and she said that was her husband's brother that happened to.
That's an incredible story.
Yeah. And you hear stories like that all the time. People that served over there.
Yeah.
Like I had an American soldier from Afghanistan tell me a story of a Jin, when they were fighting the Taliban. And he said, dude, that these they saw this ball of light green too, another one, and it came bouncing around the mountain pass. And he said there were like 8 of these Taliban, and they had us pinned down. And when that ball of light came, they just took off.
Wow.
I mean, they were gone. They were boom. They were gone. I met him at a party years ago. We were just hanging out, and I don't even remember. I think his name was Scott, but we were sitting there talking, and he was like a friend of my friend who was a Navy SEAL. And they were friends or whatever, and they were talking war stuff, and I was listening. It was pretty interesting.
Yeah.
People, though, who have done those kind of things, and I can tell you this, they don't brag about it, and they don't go around saying, I killed all these people. They don't do all that. They were just talking about different things and whatever. And I just remember this guy telling me, my brother, and my friend Scorpion, and a couple of people, we were there hanging out at an after party, and he was telling us a story. He goes, dude, there was this green ball of light, and he's like, it was the Jin, and those Taliban, they were terrified of them in those mountains. They were more scared of them than getting shot in the face, because there were things that had happened to them, and they found a body that was burned to a crisp in the village, and they thought that these Al-Qaeda had gone in there and had these Taliban had gone in there and killed these. They said no, and the whole village was like, no, it was a Jin. It was a Jin.
Wow.
Because they're made of smokeless flame, and this guy was trying to do a spell, and he had one come up out of this, like the way they describe it was like a cauldron. And he was trying to do a spell, and the villagers told these guys, they're like, this Jin came up out of it, and it grabbed him and pulled him into it, and it burned him to ash. Like he was nothing but bones and charred flesh. And they swooped him down, and it wasn't the Taliban. And these people were no friends of the Taliban. They weren't going to be like, oh, no, we're protecting the Taliban. No, they were terrified of the Taliban.
Wow.
Everybody was terrified of the Jin out there because these things roam around out there. And in the area of the Khyber Pass, I mean, they're known to be haunted by spirits and giants and these giant scorpions. I'm not saying giant scorpions like the size, but like bigger than a man's like shoe, like a big, a big scorpion. And they claim these exist. I mean, if you read the Alexander romance, where Alexander the Great, that was, 334 BC, whatever, when he took over, when he went through the Khyber Pass and all that, and went into Afghanistan on his way to conquest. Same thing. I mean, like he encountered all kinds of just crazy, weird creatures and anomalous, like cyclopses and all kinds of stuff. But, that's supposedly a work of fiction. But of course, you have this wall, the Red Wall. And I talked about it on my show. The Red Wall was built by the work of Jin and human beings working together. Now, this is going to sound weird for people who aren't initiated, but my audience is initiated. You know how crazy this gets. I can tell you. Okay. I had to do that. I can tell you, if you go and you listen to the show where we talk about the Red Wall, Alexander's people built the Red Wall. Some people claim that it was the Ptolemies that built it. That would have been his illegitimate half-brother that took over Egypt. They were Greeks. They were also the people who the Armenians claim that they can trace their heritage to. Cleopatra was a Greek. I got to it online on that one. Somebody's like, she's African. I go, she was African, but she wasn't Saharan or sub-Saharan. She was actually Greek, and they inbred. So they were pretty much, they were, 200 years removed, whatever. They were still, The thing I don't like about her is her big, kerfluffle led to the burning of the Alexandrian library, which pissed me off because there goes all the knowledge that we had. Everything Plato ever said was there, and it was gone because her and Julius decided to be angry. But the thing is, when you stop and you read these stories, now the Red Wall was something that was built to stop something. And I believe it was on a spiritual level, and you can still see the remnants of that wall in the Levant. What I'm going to tell you, is I honestly believe, and I have a friend, she's actually there, Nears Morgana, and she's actually part Berber, and she's working in Egypt right now, and they're doing a dig. And this may not come out till 2025, but it's going to be, I think it's going to be like if the people running that country would get out of the damn way and let them do what they need to do archaeologically, because she's an archaeologist. My friend Bennett's an archaeologist too. And they told me, they're like, we're about to discover something that's going to vindicate. I think it's going to vindicate Graham Hancock in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what Graham knows about it or doesn't know about it, but I really think that this is going to be something big, because it's going to be the oldest civilization next to Göbekli Tepe. It's going to be proof. I believe it's proof. And I think they already got it, but I think they're just trying to be, like Zahi Hawass. I think he's not.
Right.
If you know who that is, I mean, he's one of them, and they're like, well, he's not in charge anymore. Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. Castro's not in charge anymore either, technically. Right. But
yeah.
Okay. The bottom line is there's going to be something found there soon, the civilization wise, but it depends on politics and what gets released and what doesn't.
Right.
That situation there, I believe, is going to show proof that there was a Stargate there too. I really believe that's what happened, because, and going back to what happened now, Iraq was Babylon, and before that it was Mesopotamia. Before that it was Samaria. Right. When the United States went in to Iraq and they finally took Baghdad, where was the first place they went? What do you think? Take a wild guess.
I have no idea, honestly.
Where'd Brandy go? Brandy, you're not there? You don't want to take a wild stab at it? She's gone. Okay. So here.
Yeah, her service.
It's in and out. So here, I'm going to tell you. They went to two different places. The libraries that were still there.
Wow.
And they went to the museums. Why do you think that is?
Because of the history.
The ancient artifacts that were there.
Yeah.
Because they know. I guarantee you they know. And the people that were in charge at that time. Now, I'm not a Republican. I'm not a Democrat.
Right.
I think both of them are pretty, have a lot of, whatever.
Right.
Bush was in charge at that time. I'm not going to get political on your show, but his buddy, Darth Vader, who's his buddy, that was the vice president.
Yeah.
I mean, if you watch the stock, it was like, it went up,
Right.
And so he knew what was there. I think they did. And I think Obama knew too. I think they're always playing golf together and hanging out. They all know. They're all in together.
Absolutely.
It's a big game.
Mm-hmm.
And that they took everything out of those places. The citizens there, I know several Iraqis who've told me, they said they watched them.
Wow.
They went there and they looted the library and they looted the museums.
Wow.
The reason being because they were looking for something.
Mm-hmm.
And when they found out that Saddam had some of these things at one of his palaces, it wasn't about looking for weapons of mass destruction. They wanted to topple him because he had taken some very valuable items that belonged to, and I'm going to say this on your show, and it may be controversial, but it belonged to the Anunnaki. And I think that was a big part of it. And they said, oh, it was about oil, really, because they don't even produce, like, all the oil was Kuwait. I mean, Iraq's not a huge, whatever. We get oil from all these other places. We don't need them. Right. And so them going in there and doing what they did, there was another reason too, and that was to knock him out after they knocked out Iran. But a big part of it, I believe, was there because of the history that was there.
Yeah.
It's the same place where the Gordian knot was. And legend was that anybody who untied the knot would become the master of Asia. Of course, Alexander went in and he took his sword and just cut it. And everybody was like, oh, well, I guess the prophecy's true. Of course, he didn't become the master of Asia because he stopped, in the Indus Valley.
Yeah.
But that's, that was India. But if you look at what was uncovered there, I believe that some of these stories coming out of there were real. I believe that Iraq did have more than meets the eye. I believe that these Anunnaki had artifacts there. One of the things I'm going to tell you too, one of the stories that comes out of the Levant over and over again are these dog-headed creatures, jackal-headed creatures, lion-headed creatures, weird types of beings. They see them all the time, weird types of. They say, oh, those are jinn, those are jinn. How many types of jinn are there? It's like when Christians say it's a demon. Everything's a demon.
Right.
Here's a demon. There's a demon everywhere. A demon. Okay, look.
Right.
And then eventually you're just like, it's not a demon. Okay.
Yeah.
It is, but it's not like what you think it is. It's not,
Mm-hmm.
disembodied
Uh-huh.
spirits, but not
Sure.
everything is a demon, right?
Yes.
There's a different levels too, different types. I mean, you can cast out a demon, but it's going to be really hard to cast out an archon. And that's a whole different ball of wax. The red wall, when I was talking about the red wall, this is a historical fact. People try to say it's a mythology. No, because it was in a book full of mythology, right? When I talk about Thor and Hercules being real people, people's heads explode. And then they go, oh, he's trying to replace Christianity with a... No.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you the truth. When it talks about Genesis 6, the book of Enoch is the long version. Go read it. It talks about mighty men, men of renown. Those mighty men, those men of renown, that's who they're talking about. Thor in the north, Hercules in the south. Those were the descendants of these people. And I say people because those are the ones that did a lot of tampering and messing with our DNA. And people don't like to hear that. But that doesn't take away from the fact that Christ came to deliver us from our sins. And it doesn't take away from the fact that his Father is the creator of everything.
Right.
I'm talking about gods
Right.
as in little g. They tamper, the tampering ones, the watchers,
Yeah.
And when I tell people they don't want to believe this, they don't want to read that, don't want to hear about that. Well, how are you going to know what these cryptids are?
Right. Absolutely.
You don't know the history, because the history of everything is right there in Samaria. If you go and you read about Tiamat, okay, literally, it's like you're reading about a scientist. Her husband was a scientist.
Yeah.
He was killed by Marduk, his son. Now, if you take his name, Marduk, murder, it sounds just like. I mean, there's a reason why these names sound. He was a murderer. He killed his father. Patricide is looked down upon big time in our society. I mean, if you kill your dad.
Sure.
I mean, even if he was doing something to you, I mean, there's a lot of courts that are going to go after you. She was pissed. So what Tiamat did, she took the technology that she had and she created several different types of creatures. One of the most prominent was called the Hairy Man. These Sumerian tablet legends, right? They were carried over into Mesopotamia, and then it became Babylon. When Alexander came, Babylon was basically a province of Persia. Persia was the big boy on the block. They were the big badasses, whatever, big guys.
Yeah.
Nobody believed that he could take Persia. This is the sidelight. At the Battle of Granicus, 2 million soldiers on one side, and you had 50,000 Greeks on the other. And they defeated him. And he did it over and over again. He did it at Arbela, and he did it by the Tigris River. And everybody was like, how is this happening? How is this small group of dudes just whooping the holy crap out of this big? Because, dude, what he did, though, literally paved the way for Christianity, because he destroyed every religion.
Absolutely.
And he combined them into one Hellenistic religion based on the teachings of Plato. Socrates taught Plato, Plato taught Aristotle, and Aristotle taught Alexander. That was his tutor who went with him. They call him the Scientist King. There's a reason for that. When he conquered all these regions, he took samples of everything. He was a scientist. He wanted to know, like when they took Tyre. It was amazing what he did. I mean, the technology at the time, there's no way that could have possibly been.
Sure.
Nobody believed that he could take Tyre, but he dug under the ocean. How? What the technology he had at that time, 300 BC? How could that be possible? But he did it. And I think that what we're looking at with this situation here, I think that they had ancient technology. Like, look at Archimedes. Look at what he did.
Yeah.
You have all these different types of people in that region of the Levant.
Yeah.
And they all have these legends and these stories. And I think that he had help, because when you talk about the Red Wall, he stopped what he was doing and he spent 6 months in the Levant. What was he doing there? He had already conquered Egypt. He already conquered the Phrygians. He'd already conquered the Sumerians. What did he need? Because he helped with these creatures. I believe, this is what I really believe. People can say, oh, you're cuckoo. No. Because you don't know history. Those creatures, those jinn, helped him build that wall. What were they trying to stop? Why did that wall have so many different different types of writing on there?
Yeah.
They found like 17 different types of language there. Did the whole world come together and say, hey, let's all just carve our language on it? No.
Wow.
No. I believe that those symbols, those runes, what they were. Some of them match things that are from 1,000 miles away. I believe that there was something going on, and that wall was physical, but there was something spiritual there too, and they were trying to keep out. Now there are legends of dark beings that goes beyond what we can possibly imagine. I'm talking Cthulhu. I'm talking about like H.P. Lovecraft. And I've talked about this on my show with Chris Garetano. There is a group of people. I didn't want to give them. I didn't want to say the name. It says 9 in the name. I don't. If you want to go look it up, go look it up. But they're messed up, and I don't want anything to do with these people. But what they truly believe is that these elder gods, as they call them, the old ones, they're so massive and so powerful that they are literally black holes. That's what they are. They created the black holes. That's what they are. And so what these things are is inverted stars, which it tells us in different books of holy books all over the world that stars are actually beings.
Right.
That's not, I'm not saying that's what I believe. Scientists will tell you they're balls of gas and whatever. But then again, the Jin are made of smokeless flame. So what is that?
Right.
What is that? And we got thousands of counts of the Jin. These things are angels, right? And that's what people say. So if you take that logic, these elder gods, they're inverted. They're black holes. They're sucked in, destroyed stars. There is black matter. We know that scientifically. Listen to Michio Kaku. He'll tell you.
Right.
He was on Joe Rogan one day. Both two of my favorite people to listen to. They're both very smart guys. Everything he was saying, and Anthony and Tony were there, and he could tell you, I was saying the answers as he was talking because I've heard him speak so many times. I know what they're talking about. I love science. I love history, but it all comes together, right?
Right.
These beings, what they've been taken over by dark matter. They're the darkness. They are the darkness. Satan or Lucifer or the devil, he's not the opposite of God. He's an offender of God, but he's not the opposite of God. God is all that is love and light.
Absolutely.
He is the holy, the righteousness. There is nothing that can, what these beings are is the exact opposite. They have become one with the darkness, which is the opposite of God, right? This is the true devil, right? What we're dealing with over here, this is child's play. This is like talking about Satan, which is a title, and it's also a race of beings, the shaitan, right? They're a type of evil jinn. Then you got the devil, whatever, Lucifer, whatever you want to call him, the fallen,
Yeah.
That is not, he is a rebel, okay? The Watchers were put here because of him, and they were corrupted, right?
Right.
These are not the be-all, end-all. These bad as the devils and demons are in this, if they can get to us here in this dimension, they're not that bad. They're bad, they're evil, but compared to these elder gods, they're not. What these things are, these elder gods, if they were to come across and they managed to puncture the veil here, they would literally rip apart the space-time continuum. We would cease to exist. Everything would unravel and implode, and we would all be compressed. Now, if you read the Kabbalah, which I'm not recommending this to anybody, but I've read all these books. I'm telling you, it talks about this. I've talked about it with a few different guests, David Weatherly, and we've talked about it on my show. These beings, what they call demons, are from another universe that was compressed and destroyed, and they became fragmented beings. That's why they have like horses' heads and all this other weird stuff right over. That's how they explain it. I don't totally believe that, but I believe that that's their way of trying to explain it.
Sure.
What could have happened to a previous universe was that it was collapsed by these Cthulhu type beings, because there are people out there, folks, and listen to what I'm going to tell you. There are people who believe that this is the best course of action to annihilate not only the world and us and everything in it, but the entire universe, to destroy God's creation. And they are that evil. There is an order, like I said, and it has number 9 in it. Go look it up. They can try to church it up like whatever, but I know what they are. Okay, and they actually are behind this. They want to do this. Now they built CERN. Now look where they built it at. They built it in Switzerland, right? Okay. Are you comfortable with going down this road, or is this something you want to pull back on? It's up to you.
Sure. No, it's good.
No, it's good. You got my full attention. That's
okay. So let me tell you something. Okay, it is said, all right, that there is. And hold on, you don't have my Bible right in front of me. Hey, Anthony, let me get it. I'm going to make sure we get it. We get it correct. I know somebody's next door here. Somebody listening there? Okay, good. That's you're not Anthony, you're Tony. So
Can anyone hear me?
Yeah, look it up. Now I don't want to get this wrong. Okay. All right. Saint that was burned. Just look it up. Switzerland, Geneva, Switzerland. I need the passage, and it's in the New Testament, I believe. I know it is because he was killed like 200 years after Jesus. A lot of the New Testament was written way after Jesus had passed.
Oh, yeah.
This adds a whole nother curveball. You got to, when you read the Gnostics, you got to remember each one of these stands alone independently.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the Apocryphal of Paul and all these different types of books. I mean, it can be very, everybody's got their own opinion. You know what I mean? It's
right.
my opinion at some point.
Right.
There's a saint that was, I don't want to, I guess I can look it up. I'm going to find this. I'm going to make sure that I get the passage right, folks. He was burned in Geneva, Switzerland. Okay. And it is said in that passage, like I said, it's the New Testament. He can look it up and I'll look it up. You can look it up, whatever. It says that is the seat of Satan. It's said that's the seat of Satan. Now, when you look at that passage, okay, I'm going to look them up real quick. Hold on.
Okay.
I bet if it was a video game, you'd find it real quick. I bet that would be. No, that's not his name. Nope. I want to make sure I get it absolutely right.
Bart put up Revelation 2:13, maybe.
Let me see if that's it right there. Let me see if I can find it. I know it's Revelations, but I don't know. It says, "I know where you dwell, where Satan's throne is. Yet you hold fast my name, and you did not deny my faith, even in the days of Antipas." And he says, "My faithful witness, who was killed among you, where Satan dwells." Now, if you go to the NIV, it says, "I know where you live, where Satan has his throne. Yet you remain true to my name." This is Jesus, right?
Mm-hmm.
You did not renounce your faith in me, nor even in the days of Antipas, my faithful witness, who was put to death in your city where Satan lives.
Wow.
Geneva, Switzerland.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Antipas. And it's it's Revelations 2:13. Okay.
Wow.
I should have remembered that. I was going to say, I kept wanting to say 2:18, but I knew that wasn't right. And I didn't want to get it wrong, because if I say something wrong, then they're going to key in on and go, "I told you it was of the devil."
Yeah.
But so here it is right there, folks. There it is. Where is CERN? Geneva.
Switzerland. Yeah.
Switzerland, yeah. The collider. They're creating what? Black holes.
Wow.
Think about it.
Scary stuff, isn't it?
There was a wall.
That is scary.
Yeah. 370, I guess, or not 370, 360 BC.
Wow.
They build a wall with all kinds of incantations and everything else with the help of Jin.
Yeah.
According to the legend, there were Jin of all types that were helping humans. People came from all over the world because they saw visions that they had to build this thing. Why would devils and humans and even angels, they claimed angels helped, be on the same side? What were they trying to stop?
Right.
What was invading them? Because a wall made of brick, that's just for show.
Exactly.
The real is something invisible, spiritual, that was keeping something out. People don't think outside the box, and they don't look at things. When you wonder about things in this world, in this universe, when you're looking up at the sky, do you wonder about this? Because I'm not kind of an amateur astronomer like my friend Christopher Jordan. My gosh, that guy's an amazing, smart guy. One of the smartest guys in this field, I'm telling you. Big UFO guy. I'm into the UFOs too, but not like him. But I was an amateur astronomer, and I had this really cool telescope, and Tony was just here. My godson, I bought him one for Christmas one year, and we went out into the Devil's Backbone. We were looking at the stars. I'm going to tell you, I noticed something odd. Okay. We were once in the arm of Sagittarius, and now we're in Orion's spur. Because of where you could see in the sky, And it hit me one day, and it was like a memory flooded back to my mind, and I was like, whoa. And I got kind of dizzy. And I was like, what in the heck? What's going on here? And I'm looking for Orion, which is where we're at.
Right.
We're no longer in the arm of Sagittarius. And I'm like, this doesn't make any sense. The stars aren't where they're supposed to be. True story. I went with my wife and my friend Chris and my friend Scorpion. We were on a road trip. My wife had to go out to California to take care of some business. That's where she's originally from. She's not one of the invaders. Okay, she's a good one.
Of course.
But so we go out there, but we stopped in Roswell. And they have a planetarium there. It's actually pretty cool. And there was a guy there, and I don't want to say his name. I don't have permission to say his name, but he was, I guess, kind of like the curator, whatever.
Yeah.
And he was an astrophysicist. And I used to communicate with him back and forth. Retired, nice guy. My wife met him. Scorpion met him. Chris met him. And we started talking, and I looked at the little thing. You lay back in the chair, and you can see this. It's really cool. If you haven't been to a planetarium, you got to check it out. Another cool place is the McDonald Observatory, one of the darkest places in North America. It's right here in Texas, in Alpine, outside of Alpine, Fort Davis. Really cool place. Cool. My grandpa took me there as a kid. And so we started talking, and I said, we are now in Orion Spur. Why is that? It's like I triggered something in that guy's mind. He was just like, what? And like, he goes, what are you talking about? And I said it again. I said, we are not in the arm of Sagittarius. Weren't we in the arm of Sagittarius where we were in the galaxy? Yeah. And he was like, he stood up. He's kind of a heavyset guy, he's a really friendly guy. And he says, you're right. He goes, you're right. And my wife's sitting there, and we're just, he's having like an aha moment. This guy was a professor. And we started talking, and he started talking to me, and he goes, you're right. That's weird. He's like, it's like he just woke up. So we started having conversations, emailing back and forth about the Mandela effect and talking about all these things. This was the year before I started my show. It was the year before I started my show. Or no, wait, it was even before that. It was either 2 or 3 years before I started my show. And we started talking, and about the time of about a year before I started my show, we lost contact. Like I emailed him and never got any response. The phone number I had for him didn't work. I don't know what happened. I don't know what happened to the guy. I lost contact with him. Went through Roswell one other time, and he wasn't there. So I don't know how to explain that. But I can tell you this. When somebody who has been doing what he was doing for so long, he was into astronomy. It was like his hobby, whatever. If the Mandela effect can fool him, it can fool you. Right. And I think that all this stuff got ramped up. And I tell you right now, I'm driving a QX80. I mean, it's one of the vehicles I have. It's a QX80. I'm going to tell you right now, my friend Maurice over at the Infinity store, right off of Burnett Road, he showed me a QX90. My wife was there. We both remember it. It was a QX90. We were going to get a QX90, and we decided not to. The only reason we got this one was because my diesel, the freaking Titan, ended up having some problem they would not fix. So I had to trade it in and get that, which I didn't even want that, but whatever. Now it's a QX80. QX90 never existed. And it was something that me and my wife had talked about multiple times. It was a QX90. Wow. That's one of many, many, many Mandela effects. The seed of Satan in Switzerland's always neutral, right? They're always neutral. That way no one ever hurts them or does anything to them, and they can hoard money and gold. And if you look at the Pamp Suisse, if you collect gold and silver like I do, it's Pamp Suisse. It's all coming from Switzerland right there. That's the main, whatever. And so there's a reason why that was that Antipas was killed there. That's the seed of Satan, and that's why Christ says that's where you're at. Yeah. Wow. They're opened up that spot right there for a reason, and now there's no wall built to help us. There's no magic wall. There's nothing, and we're completely exposed, and we're at their mercy. Yep. And if they want to destroy you, they destroy you. And if they want to build black holes, which are basically inverted spirits, demons, basically is what well, not even demons. These aren't demons. These are the elder ones, the old ones. These are the These are the violent offenders that God had put away long ago before we were ever even thought of.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they are. And, you know, I think of like the Titans that were here before the gods, right?
Right.
And then take them and times a million. That's what these things are. And if they were to come to our world, come through any dimension from our world, it would completely destroy everything. It makes the devil and everything else look like child's play. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
As evil as these beings are, they're nothing compared to what these guys are.
Right.
These guys are literally the antithesis to God. When God keeps us alive and protected and safe from these things. But the answers of a lot of the questions that we have are found in antiquity.
Yeah.
And people don't want to look at that. They don't want to read. They don't want to have to, you know, they're okay with somebody telling them and it's entertainment and whatever.
Yeah.
But if they really want answers to what these things are, the answers are there. The answers, they really are. They're there. I mean, there's a lot of people that talk about this stuff. I mean, there's a lot of people that talk about this stuff, but they don't wait. They want to waste their time talking about that. They want to hear people's encounters. I get it. But where the real meat of the truth is, if you want to know what Dogman was, it was a sentinel. It was created by the Anunnaki. I said that at my conference. That's what I believe. Yeah. And they were used as Stargate guardians. Why did Anubis from Egypt, right, look like it's a Lodal? Yeah. The Aztecs, and they both use pyramids. It's universal. The pyramid's a universal symbol, right? Powerful things. So that's what they are.
Absolutely.
The Aztecs, that they use that. They even look alike. If you look up Xolotl, you'll see with an X. Starts with an X. Same thing. It looks just like Anubis. Yeah. And what did the Aztecs say? He was the guardian of the dead. He ferried the dead across. Same thing.
Right.
There's got to be something to that. They created these dog, wolf, canine creatures. You go back to Tiamat from Sumeria, right? She created a scorpion man, the Minotaur, the bull man. You know what that is? The hairy man, which is Bigfoot. I mean, this is her creations. These are her creations. And these wolf-headed creatures, that was one of them. She used them as an army. There was a flying creature that sounds an awful lot like a vampire. And she used these creatures to fight a war against Marduk. Now, Marduk defeated her. You know, she was using, I think, genetically engineered hybrids. And it wasn't all magical. It was science. I believe all magic is just science we haven't figured out yet. That's all it is. And then when you look at what happened with these beings, this war, then if you look at the Sumerian tablets, there was something that happened in the middle of Marduk's reign. They were attacked from somewhere outside of the planet. And that was what I believe. That was actually the second. To me, it was the second. Some people say it was the first reptilian invasion. Because that's what the tablets say.
Right.
People go, well, this sounds like a bunch of science fiction gobbledygook. Yes, because you've been polluted by Hollywood to think that it's all it's a big joke. It's all a big joke. Werewolves don't exist. Werewolves don't actually do it. They don't exist. People can't do that. You can't. Then why do people at these large computer companies, why do they see these people shape-shifting into their faces turning into lizards? Why do they see werewolves? Why do they see these things running around their campuses when these big shots come from Europe and Asia? There's a reason. Right. It's all connected.
Yeah.
People don't want to believe it, and they don't want to do the work because they're lazy.
Yeah. I mean, I wholeheartedly believe it's all connected. Absolutely.
Yes.
I do. I just got to say something real quick. We've been getting some trolls in chat, and I appreciate the moderators doing what they're supposed to do. They've done a good job tonight. So I apologize if anybody filters through that we don't catch, but I think
what are these trolls doing and saying? What are they doing?
Just ignorant comments, the same. So, and I told all of our moderators before the show, anybody says anything out of line, just ban them. No warnings, just ban them. So,
well, we got how many people? 327 people in the chat.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, who cares about a few ignorant people because they don't want to hear the truth. You don't want to hear the truth. That's all it is. They're allergic to the truth. Some of these people, I believe that they would it's like the witch from the Wizard of Oz. If you throw the truth on them, they just melt. Like they're made of, I don't want to say brown sugar, but brown something.
Yeah.
Brown poop or something. They just dissolve, It's like they can't. When I was in college, I didn't spend a lot of time in college. I didn't like it. It wasn't for me. It wasn't my thing. I dropped out and became successful. It wasn't for me. The brainwashing was too much, And I would argue with my professors because they were full of crap. They were wrong. They were always just trying to feed me an agenda instead of the truth. And I would raise my hand. They'd be like, they didn't want to hear me have to say anything. But I used to tell people all the time, like, this is caca on the brain, what they're teaching you. This is not the truth. This is not real. Why do we only get to hear one side?
Right.
Why do we not? In any war, there's two sides. And in any sort of politics, there's two sides. Everybody has a side. That doesn't mean you have to, but you have to know who you're dealing with.
Right.
You know, I mean, you have to know who you're dealing with. I mean, you can't just read a book and just be like, well, that's the truth right there because that person said so. They'll have facts that aren't even correct. I quit watching the History Channel because, let's face it, you know, the truth is history.
Yeah.
It's not there because they lie. They lie.
Right.
I was watching it one time, and don't take this the wrong way, but I was watching it one time. My friend was from Germany. He's actually, his dad's African American. His mother was German. My friend Jerome, he works at Tesla. Great guy. I was talking to him earlier today.
Yeah.
And so we were talking, and he was laughing. He had a friend that came down from Bremen. And they stayed at and they drink, like him and his friend, they drink all the time, man. Beer. They drink beer. Right. And they drink it warm too. They don't care. They don't care. It'd be like first thing in the morning, my friend, we're going to the store to get some Guinness. And I'm like, Guinness for what?
Right.
And his friend, I don't know, his friend would put a little bit of it in his coffee, and then he would eat cereal. And then one day I just saw him pour a little bit of it in his cereal. And I was like, and they drink it warm. They love their beer. They love their beer, right? So I was sitting there watching TV, and they had a thing on the Hitler. The History Channel's Hitler channel all the time. It's always about Hitler, whatever. It's just he's always on there, you know. Yeah. And I'm just like, I'm sitting there, and it's just nauseating crap, whatever. And they're like, Hitler this and Hitler that, and then they had him speaking, and they started laughing. And I'm kind of like, what are you laughing about? And they're like, because this isn't real. What they're saying is the translation is not correct, and it's funny to us, you know, because Americans they believe this shit, you know. And I told them, I was like, well, what is he really saying? And we didn't really even get into it, you know. We had been drinking, and we were, you know, whatever. It was like whatever. And so I didn't really know what to think of that. But then when I did some research, I learned that less than 8% of the American population understands German. So hell, they can sit there and say anything, and even only 4% speaks Russian. So they can say whatever the hell, and they're gonna be like, oh yeah, that's them some bad people. Germans and Russians are terrible people, you know, because well they said so, you know. And then how many people actually speak Iraqi? When there's several different dialects, they could get up there and say Saddam Hussein says he likes, you know. Right. He likes cucumbers better pickled. And they'd be like, oh, look, he likes them. You know, he said it. You know, they don't know what the hell he's saying. Right. He don't say anything because the average American can't even speak one language. It's the truth. I'm telling you, it's the truth. They can't speak one language, but then they say whatever the hell they want to say. Right. And it made me wake up. Not necessarily with the whole, I don't give a crap about that, but I'm talking about you don't know. Right. No, you really don't know. When I was overseas, I learned a lot from a lot of different people. I learned that we live in a bubble. We do. I don't care what anybody says. I was in Greece, and they were like, Americans, you know, and then a bunch of assholes. You know, and that's right. But then when I told them, here's the cool thing though, I told them I was from Texas, they were like, oh, Texas. And then they had a reverence for I'm not saying this because I'm from it. I'm a homer. You know, I'm a homer. Sure. I love Texas. Of course, Texas. But they would tell me, oh, you're a Texan. You're a Texan. So that was like their excuse to be nice to me. He's like, oh, you're a Texan. You're not like the other Americans, the dumb Americans. You're a Texan. Texans are tough, you know. Right. You're your own country. You were your own country. And some of them actually believed that we were still our own country. And I let it ride. I was like, yeah, you're right. We beat America's ass is what we did. We beat them in Mexico. At the same time, with one hand behind our back, we beat them up. And they were just like, wow, that's amazing, you know. And then I was sitting there bull crapping this. I was just messing with these. There was this one Italian girl, and she's over there like, she's like this with this face. And I'm like, what's wrong with you? And she's like, you're lying. That's not the truth. America you are part of America. I said, no. I said, you got it wrong. America is a part of Texas. Right. Okay? Dallas is the capital of the United States. You're wrong. Because the Cowboys beat the Redskins every year in Thanksgiving. That's how we decide who the capital is. She was like, and I had her going. She was almost like, really? I was like, see, football's so important to us that when the Cowboys and the Redskins play, whoever wins, that's the capital. That's what happens. Yeah. So it's usually in Dallas. And she was like, nuh-uh. And I was like, see, and I got you because I'm full of crap. I was telling her, like, I was messing with her. Right. No, but seriously, when you go out there and you go, I was in Brazil. My dad used to build power plant. He was an electrical engineer, a smart guy. Greedy as all hell. Won't give you a dime. Don't even try it. All his money's going to go with him when he dies. there's Brazil. It's down in Sao Paulo. And these people were trying to teach me Portuguese. It's just so hard to learn. It's not like Spanish. So Spanish. My mother's Mexican, so I could, But they were like they're speaking Portuguese. They speak it so fast, and there's so many different ways to speak it, and the words aren't the same.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was curious. And folks, this is something I'm not trying to tell you. This is a classroom or whatever. But go and look up how Portugal stayed independent. Because when you look at the map of Spain, it's got this little slice of nothing that shouldn't be there, and it's called Portugal. And they have their own language and their own autonomy, right? And then, of course, in the 1100s, they signed a treaty with Britain. It's still to this day the oldest treaty between two countries that's ever existed. It was a peace treaty, right? Because Spain in World War II, Franco was fascist, and he actually backed up the Germany. But when they invaded Russia, the Azul division, they volunteered. But they said, he's like, I'm not going to fight the West because he's right there in the middle of it. He said, but I'll fight against communism because he was paying Germany back for helping them keep them from being communist. Portugal, being kind of encapsulated by Spain, they were Britain's ally, and Britain was leaning on them very heavily. They're like, are you going to help us? Are you going to help us? And Portugal's like, we're kind of surrounded by your sort of enemy, they're neutral, but then they're really kind of not, and we're going to sit this one out. And so Portugal, though, that strained the treaty, but other than that, Portugal has always been their ally. That's because they helped them win their independence years ago and keep them from being taken over by Spain. Spain at the height of its power, most powerful. It was the emperor. He wasn't a king. He was the emperor, and they controlled the big portion of the world. And when the Spanish Armada was defeated, I don't want to say defeated because a storm did it. Britain brags about how they defeated Spanish Armada. They didn't. It was a storm, but it destroyed 80% of their fleet. And so what ended up happening? Portugal managed to stay an independent country. And I said, how did this happen? And my dad, who's he's left brain guy, very smart. He doesn't there's no creativity. He's like, go read about it. What do you think, dumbass? I'm an electrician. Do you think I know about that? You want to know history? Go pick up a book. He's like, all these things we got over here called books, read them. I'm like 8 years old. He's giving me a lecture. And then he's like, you don't know anything about economics. You don't know anything. I'm like, I'm 8 years old. I'm not worried about anything but playing PB football and collecting GI Joes. I don't know anything about stocks and bonds. And so my dad was one of those people, super hyper intelligent. My mother, same way, super hyper intelligent. And they were both so focused on you need to learn. And I remember one time I was going to Rebecca school, as a Christian school, science, their version of science. The world's 5,000 years old, right? There were no dinosaurs. They were put there by the devil. That's science, right? So you're sitting there, and I had one yelling at me on one side, one at me on the other side because I was doing algebra. You know what grade I was in? 5th grade. Writing a term paper, 5th grade.
Oh, wow.
10-page term paper, 5th grade.
Wow.
Right? And so my parents are screaming at me, how can you not understand this? This is simple math. And I'm like, you know why? Because it's algebra. It's not something you learn until like 10th grade. I was doing it in 5th grade. And so they thought it was just perfectly normal and okay to force that on you. And so I had to learn at an early age, and they bought me a set of encyclopedias. Now, folks, back then we didn't have a magic box that told you the mysteries of the universe at the touch of your fingers where you can look up Revelations 2:13. By the way, thank you for Barton only for that. I was having a moment there. Let me tell you something. You had to know, right? There's the encyclopedias. Go read them. So my dad told me by the end of this is the most ridiculous thing. He's like, it's June. By the end of the summer, you should already be. He just like, I think he just did it at random. He's like, you should be at the P's. Yeah. A through P. I got to read the Encyclopedia Britannica, A through P. Yeah, for real. This is true. And even my mother, who was she was more about it than he was. She was like, you need to be able to read. She's like, A through P, you should be through the whole thing. So they dangled a carrot for me. And my parents told me, they said, we'll give you $100. Now, in 1984, 85, whatever, $100?
It's a lot of money.
It's a lot of Transformers, a lot of GI Joes, a lot of He-Man. But they didn't have any, they never believed that I was going to do it. So they put my sisters, the twin pillars of evil, they put them over me to quiz me about different parts of the encyclopedia. So each time I read one, I had to take a 30 quiz, right? So they came up with all kinds of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I got to the F's and I was about like, F this. This is ridiculous. and so when you read A through F and you're like, I did this. I mean, it was, halfway through the summer.
Mm-hmm.
Of course I didn't succeed. I got to like the Q's or something. But I ended up going ahead and finishing and reading it. But I did it over the next like year. I finished from there to the Z's, whatever. And so one time on my show, some guy says, dude, did this guy swallow encyclopedia? Yeah, I did. I actually did because I was told to do that. And I've also read the Bible. I read the Quran. I've read the Bhagavad Gita. You need to go back and read all these books. And you don't have to take everything you read and go, I'm going to make this literal. I've read about, the Germans in World War II. I've read about the Russians in World War II. I've read about the Japanese in World War II. I've read about the British, the Americans, and everybody's side in it. I've read about the Spanish.
Wow.
You have to know history. If you don't know history, you don't know where we've been, you won't know where we're at, and you damn sure won't know where we're going.
Yeah. I got to tell you, reading the encyclopedia, kids today don't even know what that is, number one. And
they know
that's
Wikipedia.
quite impressive because, my parents had the Encyclopedia Britannica too, and when we needed information, my mom would tell me, well, where everything is to go look. So that's quite impressive as a young child. I got to say that.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
I didn't know half of what I was reading either. I mean, I'm like 9. I think I was 9, and I finished when I was like 11. So you don't know what the hell you're reading. You're sitting there reading, but you don't really know. I remember this. You kind of remember.
Yeah.
But my mom would always fall back on, my son's read the encyclopedia. She was very proud of that. He's read the Bible. He's read this. He's read. She was very proud of my knowledge and what I had, but it was pushed on me.
Yeah.
It was pushed on me, and my dad frowned upon me playing with action figures. He called them dolls, and he would break them. He would break them. He'd break them. He would pick up my G.I. Joe and throw them, or my He-Man when he'd get mad, which was all the time. He was always mad. And he would come in my room, and he wasn't a drinker. He had no excuse. He wasn't like on drugs or drink. If he was a drug addict or a drunk, I could give him an excuse for being psychotic all the time. But no, he wasn't. He just did it because he was that way. And he would find anything to fly off the handle and break my toys. He was about sports.
Right.
And I had the opportunity to graduate before I was even in 9th grade. And he was like, nope, you're gonna go to high school so you can play ball. And that was my mom used to always say he was living vicariously through me, but yes, she was too. She was all into this. You're going to be this smart scientist. And she was always like, you're going to be a scientist, right? You're going to be a scientist. She bought me a chemistry set. Now I got rid of the fire ant problem in our yard.
Yeah.
The chemistry set. I literally blew up the yard. I blew up the whole yard, and my dad came home. But my mom was like, you can't be mad about that. She's like, because you're the one that told him to do something productive, and he did.
Yeah.
But he's like, you put huge holes in there. Yes, but the fire ants were gone. That's the price you pay. Do you want fire ants? You want holes in the yard? Or you want fire ants? It's your choice.
Right.
I was always a smart mouth kid too. And my dad was always like, you think you're smart, you think you're smart, blah, blah, blah. Then when I got older, he wanted me to be an engineer. He's like, well, if you're not, but be an engineer. And then he didn't support me fighting. I used to be a fighter, MMA. I did a bunch of amateur stuff. I did a lot of amateur fighting. There was no money in it back then.
Right.
And I met a lot of guys in the fight game, a lot of guys that are pro wrestlers and a lot of guys that are fighters. I've met tons of different fighters over the years, like famous guys, and my dad, and he kind of supported me, but he wouldn't really go watch me. Yeah. His thing was he wanted me to be a baseball player, and man, I was a good baseball player. But the thing is, that's his dream. That was his dream. That wasn't my dream. And I was better at football because of my size and my speed and my quickness, my lateral speed. Yeah. And so, and people don't know. They think I'm some big out of shape guy. You saw me at the conference. I'm like huffing and puffing when I walk. I don't do that.
Right.
They're like, oh, you need oxygen to walk around. I'm like, really? Then you haven't met me in person. That's all. Right. That's just a person that doesn't know me. I was on my feet for 15 hours, 3 days straight, I guess 3 days if you count the memorial. I was at the freaking water park all day. So I don't know what these people are thinking when they say stuff like that because they don't know me, they don't know anything about me.
Right.
And I do Wim Hof, which is a breathing exercise. And I encourage everybody listening, folks, go do Wim Hof because that will help you. That will help you. Seriously, just look up Wim Hof, WIM.
We'll write that down.
Wim Hof. Start with the beginner. And he's a Dutch guy, and he goes, slow it down. Here we go. He'll coach you through it. He's a good guy. And do the Wim Hof. If you look him up on there, there's a beginners for everybody. And then there's another one. It's like the advanced course. Gets the oxygen to your brain. It gets you going. There's very few people who can survive without oxygen to the brain. I know one guy who has only 3 arteries going to his head instead of 4. Stetson Lewis. He's a MMA fighter and he's a bull rider. He's an amazing kid. I want to have him on my show eventually. He had a near-death experience. We got to talk about it. I love bull riding.
Yeah.
I had a cousin who was a bull rider. But
my husband's an ex-bull rider.
Is he really? Oh,
Mhm.
man. Oh,
Yeah.
man. Yeah, I'm going to an event in December. I got my insurance agent, Mike Sealer, great guy. He loves hearing about these cases, too, because a couple of them I've covered recently were near where he lives. And so we were doing some dogman stories out there. And so the bull riding thing, I love it. It's great. It's fun. You know, it can be brutal, but, you know, dude, I have never in my life gotten on a bull, except for when I was a kid. I did try one time, and it was a young bull that I was kind of friends with, and he threw me off immediately, and that was it. That was my bull riding career right there at the age of, I think, 10 years old or
thank you
something.
for me either.
Yeah, and my cousin Donnie, he was crazy. He'd run up and he'd smack this one bull. I mean, he was just cantankerous, mean, bad SOB, and then he would chase us. And one day he hit him in the butt and just lifted him up. And I just remember him going 30 feet into the air over the electric fence. And while I was watching him, I hit the electric fence. The only time I've ever been really, and just spun over it. And I felt like everything in my body was just about to blow out because I was just like the electric fence. And so the bulls, I would not mess with those animals. They're terrifying to me. And so I have massive respect for a guy who will get on top of a bull and do all that. That's incredible what they do. I would never do that. Another thing I won't do is ride a motorcycle. I rode a motorcycle one time when I was 16. I hit a ditch and I flipped, went 20 feet in the air, and I never got back on one in my whole life. I will never do it. I won't do it. I'm scared to death. My wife used to ride motorcycles all over the place. She was always riding motorcycles. She has pictures of her with her motorcycle. That's impressive. Yeah. She was an airplane mechanic too, something I don't know anything about. She's like, got all these skills, that I don't have. Yeah. But that's what makes the world go round. There's some people, they got to be the best at everything. I did that. Yeah, I did that.
Right.
Oh, he wrote a book. I wrote 3 of them. And it's like,
right.
Just be honest.
One of those one-up is,
Yeah, you meet people like that all the time. You meet them and you're just like, this person's full of crap because they want to. I'm a war hero. Oh, really? Yeah, you were in a war. Yeah, what was it? Was it the Great War at Walmart for the Black Friday big screen TVs? You survived,
right?
I mean that's what these people they live in a fantasy world, But they don't want to read, they don't want to research, and then they say boots on the ground. That means they go around, walk around their backyard with a flashlight. What was that? Was that dude? It's a possum,
right?
That's what that is. North American possum. It's a marsupial.
Yeah.
But these people, though, I'm telling you, they're so many people in this field that do such good work. There's no time for these hucksters, these ridiculous people. It's just ridiculous. And you got to chafe when you sitting there doing your work and you're doing good work, and you ladies do. And then you got these people who are cheating with the numbers and all the fake and all the crap. And you're like, what is this? Why are we? Oh, you're a smaller channel. No, you're a smaller channel too. You're just pretending. I don't wear a mask.
Yep.
And I think a lot of what's happened recently, I'm not going to get into a big thing about it, I promise you, but it's exposed who the contenders and who are the pretenders. And I realize now I'm proud of my channel. We're a lot bigger than we thought we were.
Yeah.
Because a lot of these big boys out there aren't even real. Go to Social Blade, folks. I'm telling you, I'm not trying to stir the pot.
I agree
trying
with
to stir the witch's cauldron, but that's what it is.
Our spikes on Social Blade have been like conferences we've done or things like that, being on your show, that's where our spikes come. So
we every spike we have, we know where it came from, and it we work for every bit of it. It wasn't paid for.
Yeah.
And spikes should correspond with views, and subs should be corresponding.
Absolutely.
Some of these people's channels is not.
We want people to want to watch us, not because we paid them to watch us.
Right.
We want it to be honest, and it's just how we are. And we've said that from the beginning. We're not one we'll ever buy subscribers or views. No. I just think that's wrong, because really it does nothing for you except make your numbers just on the outside look good, not on the inside.
And it'll kill your algorithms eventually too. It'll mess you up to where, from what I'm seeing from these people, they can never get it back right. And then you lose people's trust too, because once you've been exposed for being a fraud, that's it. There's really no coming back. I mean, you have to be really hardcore, just
Yeah.
really deranged to keep looking at these people and go, oh, well, this after you've been told and that it's not real. I mean, what kind of, now maybe if they had mad cow disease, I could understand it. Because it's a spondylocephaliform that goes into your brain and it eats holes in your brain. So maybe they ate some bad beef 7 years ago and now they're just like they got Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease, CJD.
Who knows?
I'm being facetious. I'm just saying, like, that's the only way that I could even comprehend that somebody with their brain has to be mush to look at that. And then some of these network shows too. I mean, I was joking with Garetano the other day about it because we want to do a documentary together. And it's him and Eric Palacios. Eric Palacios has made the Beast of Brushy Creek. He's a really good, documentaries, all that. He's a good guy. Real investigative journalist. I like him a lot. Garetano's another one. Dark Files, Montauk Chronicles, and Strange World. Very good. I met him because I was watching TV and I was laying there in bed and I was like, my wife was on her phone. She likes to play the games or whatever, and she's into those really hard. They're hard. Like you said, like they're brain games.
Right.
So I'm like, it's not like mindless entertainment. She's really getting into those. It's really you look at them and you're like, that's difficult. So I'm sitting there, I'm watching TV. I don't get much time to watch TV, and I see Garetano come on the TV, and it's on Austin, and he's talking on an episode about a haunted house that is right there where I covered a case that I had given to Linda Godfrey years ago, and I was like, I'm sitting there, I sat up in bed, and I'm like, honey, look at this guy. It's Chris Garetano is on there talking, whatever. And I said, I need to get in touch with this guy. I didn't get in touch with him. So I just went to Facebook and I told about my show. And Garetano's, he's one of those people, he's guarded. He doesn't know me. He doesn't know anything about me. So he goes and looks at my show and he messages me back and says, look at your show. I like what you do. Let's talk, So we started talking. We became friends and we have so much in common. Same thing with Eric Palacios. Eric Palacios was pulling the FOIAs, on some stuff over there in the LBL. And we started talking about these cases. The next thing, I'm like, where are you at? He goes, I'm in Round Rock. I'm like, you're in Round Rock? I'm in Austin. I live right here. Yeah. And so then it went from there, Sure. And that's how you ladies, you got to get them on the show. Those guys are good. You got to get those guys on the show.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of people. I'm going to send them your way. Sure. I'll send them your way. And I really like the Seth Breedlove. That was great. He's never even been on my show. I've never asked him, but he does a good job, and those are people right there. They're leading us, on TV into the brave new world of where we need to be. Those three, remember those names: is Seth Breedlove, folks, Chris Garetano, and Eric Palacios. Those are going to be guys. They're going to be players in this. You watch. I'm telling you, I'm going to predict the future here. The boots on the ground, the real boots on the ground. I tell you, Hellbent Holler.
Agreed.
Yes, they are badasses, dude. They're going to be bigger than us. I'm going to tell you right now. At least at some point, they probably will surpass us, and that's fine. I'm not doing this for accolades or whatever. What do you call it? Be touted or whatever.
Right.
These fools that are talking about me, they're like, he wants to be the leader of the community. I'm already a leader in this community. I don't need to become one, and I don't want to control or do anything. But everybody to be left alone and have their own autonomy, and for us to have a community like we're supposed to, like normal people, like normal adults. Yeah. Right. Not these fakes, the frauds and all that. I don't need to mess with none of that. And I don't need the money for that. So don't even try it. They've tried to bribe me. They've tried everything they can. They're dirty as the day is long. I'm telling you, records is long and dirty as a public toilet seat, folks. So anyway, these guys, these are the ones that are going to lead us into the future. Those are the real boots on the ground. Barton Nunley. That's a wagon you're going to want to hitch your cart to. He's doing the live stream. Yep. He's going to blow up. And you guys, I predict you guys too, Tex, and of course, BMR, you're going to be on the right side of history. You watch. I'm predicting them. You're going to be on the right side of history. And I'm telling you right now, all these other people, these whatever they are, they're going to fall. They're going to, because they're not real. And nobody, they always say drama. You got to have the drama to end all drama, and then it's over. That's it. Yep. Done deal. Okay. Yep.
Absolutely.
They use AI to make stories. Have you ever tried to use AI to make art? You know what they do? They give you 6 fingers. Why is there a 6th finger? The only thing I've ever heard of with 6 fingers was the Nephilim. Yeah. 2 rows of teeth, 6 fingers.
Yeah, I've never used AI. Never tried to.
I don't think I'd know how.
Yeah.
There is an app, and my friend Chris, he's in the next room over. I can tell. Hey, Chris, I'm gonna see if he can come in here. He's probably next door listening. I'm going to tell you right now, he showed me the AI artwork. He made one of like a Santa Claus or something like that. I can't remember what it was. I don't know if you guys are listening over there. Anybody? Where's Chris? Oh, they did? Okay, well, I can ask you. Do you remember the picture that Chris sent us with the Santa Claus? With the 6 fingers? He was holding because we made one for Barton. And I don't know if Barton remembers this, but I sent it to him. It was always Coca-Cola, because Barton loves Coca-Cola, right? So there was a big rivalry between him and Ken Gerhardt, because Ken at the first conference, you guys weren't there, but he bought a bunch of Shasta. And then he said all this crap on Kenny Irish's table. I love Kenny Irish. He's a great guy, another good author, good guy, good dude. Wrote the foreword for his second book. And he's like, what is this? I said, just knock it off the table. You don't need it. It's a bunch of crap and a bunch of snacks. He said, just put it on his table. And so I just go there and I knock it all off. And he goes, who brought all this Shasta? I said, that's for Barton. So Barton comes in and Kenny's like, hey, your Shasta's over here. And Barton's like, what the hell? What is wrong with you, sir? I don't drink that crap. And Kenny's like, oh, well, Wolf told me that. He's like, well, Wolf's full of crap. I don't drink Shasta, man. And then Ken's like, I bought the Shasta. I thought you might be thirsty.
Oh, yeah. Bart's just Coke, man.
Bart drinks Coca-Cola like we drink water. And I tell you what, he's one of the only people that's been able to hang with us and work. He did my workout, the basic workout. I'm proud of him for that. Nobody else has been able to do that. They come to Austin and say, I want to work out with you. They could do it. They could do the first level. But Barton did it. He's a strong guy. So I told him, I said, dude, you drink Coca-Cola every day? If I did that, I'd be dead. I'd be, you'd be dead, right? So Barton, so we made him a meme for Christmas. I sent him this silver coin. It was 1 ounce. It was Coca-Cola Santa Claus. And I made him a little meme, right? The finger comes out with I didn't do it. My friend did 6 fingers. So Ken said, big fight about that too. And Ken, not just friendly. So in the last conference, you ladies, you saw the picture of them two with the different drinks, right? That's what.
Yes.
So Ken came on my show on the live stream, and he was like reading about the origins of Shasta and the different flavors and where it came from. And Bart was over there just freaking out in the chat,
right?
And we were messing with him. We were messing with him, but the 6 finger thing. Why is it the AI always has the 6 fingers? Do you know why? I mean, because I'm telling you right now, because AI is. I'm not going to sit up here like some ignorant, person. That's of the devil, but I mean, come on. It's starting to take over more and more prominent role in our life. And I'm going to say something. There are people who they do this OnlyFans thing or whatever. If you don't know what that is, whatever. Those people, you can have some big fat guy down in his basement now make up a fake profile and just make fake pictures of and these guys are over here paying money to look at this fake pictures.
Wow.
That's where we're at. We're on the precipice of that right now. That's what's happening. So it's going to change the way things are done. And I'm telling you, these fools that are messing with that AI, I don't think it's I think it's a corruption. Yeah. I think it's a corruption of everything. And so, I made a statement that may sound a little bit outlandish, but it's going to come to pass. You watch. I've been right about a lot of things, not everything. But I'm going to tell you right now, I don't want those corrupted people coming and messing with me and my stuff. I want them to stay over there. You've made your bed. You've chosen to say slanderous things with your people that you support and you like. Stay over there with the liars. I don't want you because you've been exposed to that fake AI stuff.
Right.
I don't know what the ramifications are of that. I don't know what that is. I don't know what's going to happen because some of these people, when they get bombarded with this nastiness, in their minds, it corrupts. It completely corrupts. And I'm telling you, they've been doing this for a long time. I mean, they do it with everything, with chemtrails, with everything you could possibly imagine. The plastics causing cancer. The more plastic we use, the more women get breast cancer. Like more children have autism. Why is that? Why is that? And then they want to give you, and I'm not going to say the words, but they want to give you something, what is that doing? What is that doing to us? I mean, I talked to a lot of doctors and I talked to a couple scientists, one from Korea, and he says, can I come on your show? And I said, you can't, because if you came on my show and then you told the truth, you know what would happen? I guess I'd probably have to go to Rumble because that's what, and that's where I'm headed because I need to be able to tell the truth. I need to be able to get these people on the show and talk about the reality, these doctors, these scientists, I had a lawyer recently that wanted to talk about trademarking and how people scam and do this other stuff. And I said, that'd be a cool intro. Like if you did a show, and I was thinking about doing it on Rumble, if I did a show the first 30 minutes, have somebody that's non-paranormal come on there until the guest comes on.
Yeah.
Right? Just have them talk about whatever it is that they talk about, buying commodities or gold, learning about the economy, learning something from a history major, learning something from science, because it's all related. All this stuff, you're going to need all this stuff. Bring on a survivalist that talks about how they need to, this is the kind of stuff that you got to think outside the box, and then we can talk about ghosts and all kinds of folklore and history and Bigfoot and whatever. Because it's all connected, and this is a very real part of our world. And I would dare say that is the actual reality.
Mm-hmm.
The mundane world is sort of like the distraction.
Yeah.
We get distracted in the 9 to 5, the physical of our world, when really we're spirits having a physical experience, not the other way around.
Right.
But
Absolutely. Well, I got to tell you, I'm glad you decided to stick around.
why?
For sure. Why? Because I enjoy your show.
Oh, I thought you were doing some kind of giveaway or something. I was like, okay.
I was like, what? Wait, huh? She got me too. Don't worry.
Well,
She got me too. I was like,
stick
hey.
around because I know that it was a big thing for you and your family, that you were going to step down for a while.
Oh, you're talking about that. Yeah, because, that wasn't the first time when we talked about that, like the first time was after the first conference. And I think Lyle really talked me into, and then when me and Ken had a talk like the next day.
Yeah.
And it was actually about he had taken the truck back and said, hey, I took it back and dropped it off. And he asked me how I felt. And I said, I felt fine. He's like, are you still committed to not doing what you do? And then he gave me a pep talk.
Mm-hmm.
A few days go by and Barton, he's in the chat. I know Barton gave me a call and he's like, bro, you can't quit. I deny I will not accept your resignation. I will not accept it.
Yeah.
He's like, you got to he's like, who's going to help lead us? And you got to do this, brother. He's like a WWE guy or something,
Right.
He's like, it's up to you, brother. You can't do this. You can't quit.
And I can hear Bart saying that too.
Yeah. And then he does that real long, why?
Yeah.
Why? And I'm like, Barton, I said, I need a break. He goes, take a break, go to the Bahamas or whatever the heck it is you do, bro. Whatever you got to do, man. He's like, and you come back and you sit there and you talk and you tell these people what they need to hear, brother.
Yeah.
And so I was like, you're right. And so when I told Bart, I said, I'm going to write a book.
Yeah.
He said, well, that's great. Write a book, but you got to keep doing what you're born to do this.
Yeah.
And then I started talking to Lyle and I said, what do you think I should do? So when you're going to write a book, you got to talk to people who've written books. That's kind of how it works. Instead, you got people who like, you know what, I'm a boots on the ground. So I'm gonna go write a book. I'm just gonna write a book, and it's gonna be good. It's gonna be the most goodest book that's ever been written. You watch what I do, and then they write this thing that looks like a little golden book, 30 pages in crayon, and you're like, oh, you're criticizing them because I don't know why I can't criticize this person's book. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not trying to be mean. And people send me a book. Hey, take a look at my book. If you don't want the criticism, don't send it to me because I'm going to read it and I'm going to tell you the brutal truth, right? People told me the brutal truth.
Right.
Halfway through my book, I sent it to somebody and they said there's good and not good. And right now, this is in between.
Yeah.
It needs a little work. It's my first try, right? So you go back to the drawing board. You can't be so arrogant that you can't take criticism when somebody tells you, hey, these are authors. Right. It's not like podcasting. So Lyle, I talked him into being a podcaster. He talked me into being an author, and that's how it went. And then to tell you, that's the truth. Yeah. And then I had Barton talking to me, David Weatherly talking to me, Nick Redfern talking to me. A lot of big authors, big names. Those are the people you need to go to. And I had each one of them looking at it saying, what do you think of this? Am I doing this correctly? Sure. Ken Gerhard helped me interview people. Can't thank him enough. Barton Nunley, it was very instrumental in that. And some people will sit there and say stupid things. They'll be like, well, you had all those people help you, whatever. You could do the same thing if you got off your lazy butt and took the boots on the ground that are by the door, right? Right. Yeah, and put them on and go to work. Okay, you go to work and do what I do, and then you could do the same thing. Yeah. There's nothing stopping you from success except for yourself. And they call me all kinds of names. They call me Jerry Jones of the paranormal world, whatever. You need to be the owner of the Cowboys. You're just full of, these conferences and blah, blah, blah. They're mad because they're not bringing anything to the table. You were at my conference. It was a great time. Everybody had a blast. 3 days of just entertainment and fun. Yep. These people don't know how to do that. And then they're over there and they're mad. They're mad. And every one of them was invited. and every one of them didn't go, and every one of them is salty. Okay, they're more salty than what is it? The Morton's. They have more salt content in the body than a whole thing of Morton salt. I'm telling you right now, these people, they're never going to be happy. They're never going to be happy. And if you succeed and you get big, then they're going to come after you because they're going to be mad because you're successful and they're not. So let's bring everybody down instead of building people up and bringing yourself up.
Right.
When you guys are doing better than me, you know what that tells me? I got to do better. That doesn't tell me, let me see how I can go, run them down and bring them down and drag them down so I can be over them. No, I bring myself up. That's what's supposed to happen in these people's brains. It's supposed to be like, I need to do better.
Absolutely.
You need to do better. If people are whooping you and whatever, figure out why.
Yeah.
Now, if it's fake, it's fake. But if there's something that they're doing that you're not doing, then you need to do better. That's the problem with people. They don't look at things that way.
Yeah.
So when I wrote the books, that's what happened. I went to authors that could tell me,
sure,
this is what you need to do. Now I had a long talk with Lai about it and about using. I've always been a pet peeve on reusing the same words and like the next sentence to overuse of words. So I was real guarded against that, and I did a really good job of like trying to keep it, the proofreading, things like that. And Beth, I sent it to her. She sent it back to me. Beth Wahiski, folks, are very, and then I had Eddie. Oh God, what's his name? Eddie, gonna kill me. He's the guy that did my formatting. Great guy. Hey, Anthony, what's Eddie's last name? I'm drawing a blank here. Great dude. Kadi, Eddie Kadi. Eddie, great guy, nicest guy. We still need to send him copies of our books. He formatted it, and the first go, I didn't know what the hell I was doing. So he sat there, like, held my hand, not literally because we were on the phone, but he basically walked me through and said, this is what you got to do. And so the next book was like just bam, bam. So I'm working on a third book now. I'm like about 2 chapters in. What you got to do is just be focused. And with this stuff going on around me, I can't be focused. And that's the whole plan, is just to keep me busy so that I'm busy with them. What they're going to hate life, because what they don't understand is I've been for 20 years, I slept 4 to 5 hours a day. And I just always do that. And I work all the time. I work all the time. I don't stop. I'm always working. And I'm going to write, and I'm going to do the show, and I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing. And even with that, okay, 5 of them, and they can't stop me. And they can't stop me, and they're mad. They're just mad. They're going to be mad. They're probably mad right now, probably watching me over there. He's out there. He knows history. How do I learn history? Let me eat his encyclopedia. Just read. And stop. Get a job. Stop buffooning everybody. Get a job. None of them work. They don't work. That's the problem with the whole country. Nobody's working. Everybody, and then we're supposed to work for everybody that's not working. How does that work? It doesn't. Just like them. And so that's the problem. It's very simple. And there's an easy fix. And they hate my audience. That my audience they're the most loyal audience. I'm telling you, YouTube, I'm telling you, in the paranormal world, they're the most loyal audience right now. I can tell you, what is it? 327 right now. Yeah. 327 people, paratroopers. They follow me. My fans travel. They know that I'm going to tell them something new every time. They're going to learn something new. That's my promise to you. When I go on a show, I keep I have a team. I'm not the Lone Ranger. I have a team. I have 7 people that help me. There's 8 of us. Wow. And they keep track of everything, and they help me. Each one has their own department. My wife, thank God for her, Anthony, Tony, Zane, Alec, Russell, and Gary. Those are the people that help me. Those are the people that work for me. They trust me. They know that I'm a trustworthy person. I've had people working for me for decades. Exactly. There's another one right there, Bettina. Allies, big time allies. And they thought that they were just going to come in and run her over like a bull because they don't like women. I don't care what you say. You don't like women. I know it's kind of weird. It's kind of weird how they don't like women. It's weird. I don't know what you're into. I don't know but they don't like women. I know that. Yeah. And see a woman, it's like, oh yeah, I'm going to do this and that. And if it's a guy, they're kind of like, But if it's a woman, they'll come in swinging because, I guess that's how they were raised. But the thing is, they thought they could go and run her over, and they thought they could attack Abe. And I went in, and I've been bogged down in this for 6 weeks. But you know what? I don't care if it takes 6 years. I'm gonna root them out. You're not gonna win. You're fake. And we got shows like this right here that need to be headlining, and you're taking up airspace that we need to be breathing. You don't need to be that. Get out of here. You're breathing up our oxygen. And I'm gonna keep saying what I'm gonna say. It's gonna happen. Thank you for having me on, ladies. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
You guys
and count us in at the conference.
Absolutely. You guys didn't speak at the last one. Are you guys going to try to speak this time?
We would love to if you'll have us.
Okay. Yep. And the other thing, David wanted me to make sure, David Weatherly, him and Ken both, Are we going to do it in Austin? Because you guys going to come down to Austin? Is that too far?
We
We'll do
go
it.
everywhere.
Okay, all right. Because
We'll
I know
be
you
there.
guys travel, but a lot of people are like, oh, I don't want to go all the way to Austin because that's the only way I can do it. It's only I can't go like the Tennessee's. That was just right out. We were just all of us were done for that. But then the Fort Worth, you know. So I talked to everybody, and they said, yeah, we'll go to Austin. I talked to Redfern and Blackburn and everybody. They'll be here.
Yeah,
and we'll do it again.
Yeah, well, we're going to be in Shirts, Texas, in January. So
I saw that.
Yeah.
You know what? I'm going to show up. I'm going to pop in. I'm going to say
That
hi.
would
come
be
on.
awesome. Have you ever met the Kling brothers?
I did. I was at the I was at their conference. They put a good conference on. I went to the one in San Antonio, and that's where my dear friend Ryan Edwards nearly died on the railroad tracks.
Oh, wow.
And you got time for a quick story? I can tell you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, so Ryan wrote a book. He's got a really good. He's got a bright future. He's another one. Keep track of him and Kenny Irish. They're going to be watch. They're writing books. They're good. Ryan, bless his heart, dude. He gets his vehicle stuck on the railroad tracks. So I come in the next day. That was the night before the VIP thing, right? So I go in and I'm there in the afternoon, and so I met the Kling brothers. They had Ghost Lab, I believe, right? A show.
Yep.
Yeah.
Good guys, couple of nice guys. And so I talked to Greg Lawson. He's a good friend of mine.
Yep, you know Greg.
And so they're all there. You know, everybody's there. Ken, Lyle, and so we all went to go eat dinner. It was me, Debbie Wedley, and his wife, and Lyle and Ken, and we all went to go eat dinner. And they were telling me the story. And here's Ryan Edwards. His vehicle gets stuck on the railroad tracks, and there's a train coming.
Oh
It's
my
no
God.
joke, man. But it was funny because he got out of the vehicle. I mean, and left his car there because, you know, he thought he was going to get smushed, so he's got to get out of the vehicle.
Sure.
And Lyle said he gets out, and all he sees is he's got this black cloak that with his cape that he wears. He wears the steampunk goth thing, you know.
Yeah.
And he sees the red kind of blowing in the wind. And I can't remember if it was Lyle or David, but they were like Dracula on the rails, and they were writing on a napkin. They were like, because David has written some songs for Lyle Blackburn for Ghoul Town, right? And then they worked together to do the. Hey, Tony, what's that video game that they did the soundtrack for? Or Anthony, whoever's here. There's a video game. They did the soundtrack. David Weatherly and Lyle Blackburn. They did the soundtrack for a video game. What is it called? It's an Old West game, not Red Dead. He'll remember it in a minute. Call Tony. Tony knows. So anyway, they're over there and they're writing lyrics on a napkin. Literally, he goes, "I got an idea about a song, Dracula on the Rails," because he's Ryan, big tall Ryan with that hat, you know, and he's got to me he kind of looks like Van Helsing, really, but he's got the cape flowing, you know, and he just nonchalantly walks away from his car, and I was like. So I talked to Ryan about it, and I said, "What happened?" We were at the conference, at my conference, and we were sitting there Friday night, and I said, "What happened with that? You just walked away, didn't?" He's like, "Well, I figured my car was going to get destroyed, so I mean, why run? You know,
Right.
I didn't want to look that stupid running away, wearing my cloak, you know, a cape."
That's
So
hilarious.
he gets out, and that gave Lyle an idea, and they said that they were really going to write that song. It was going to be called "Dracula on the Rails." So I don't know if they've written it yet or not, folks, but you heard it here first. I'm gonna tell you that's what happened at the restaurant we were eating at. Me and my wife were there. Tony was there, and we were all laughing. We had such a good time. But that was from that conference, and I wasn't a part of that conference. They asked me if I wanted to be a vendor. I didn't have time for it.
Yeah. The Brad and Barry are really good friends of ours, and they did invite Brandy and I to this one. So how can we turn them down? You know, they actually don't do a whole lot of podcasts, and they came on our show few months back, and we appreciate that. So we try to support them as much as, you know, they've supported us. So
Yeah.
they're good
If
guys.
they need another speaker, tell them. You know, I don't really keep up with them much. They were nice guys, nice to me. I don't do many conferences. I go to support my friends, you know, when they're in town, because I don't like having to be like I'm having to pin down a date. You know, I'm busy, and that's not me. Like, oh, I'm super important. No, I'm just a busy guy. And I don't do many shows. People know that. I get asked every week to do a show with somebody, and I don't really know people. There's a lady from Britain asked me to do a show. No offense to her, but I didn't really know her, and I said, I really don't know you. I don't know what the angle is there. But you know, you guys had asked me at the conference, and I said yes. Yeah. And so doing a show with you was important to me because I consider you my friends. I only do shows that are my friends. If I get to know somebody, I'll work with them. Otherwise, I don't do it. I don't have to, because I have my own stuff I got to take care of. You know, I got my things.
Right.
But I'll be at the conference, and if they want somebody else, if they need somebody, holler at them. Tell me I'd be willing to do it. If I know way in advance, I can do it. Or if
Okay.
they got everybody they need, I'll just show up and support you guys. I don't care.
Yeah,
It's
I know
whatever.
Lyle's going to be there. He's one of their speakers that
What about
weekend.
Ken? I'm sure Ken lives there. Him and Ryan
I'm not
Ayers
sure
probably,
about Ken. I know Lyle is.
I know Lyle's going to be there.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm not sure if Ken has something else going on or if he's going to be there or what. But I can ask Barry though.
Yeah, I mean, it's no biggie with it. If that's just if they need somebody. It's not
Yeah.
not big deal to me. But the book signing yesterday didn't happen, because obviously people were acting a fool. So and I don't want them to think by January, hopefully everything will be the way it's supposed to be.
Oh, for sure.
But these people, they think that they're going to up in my career or ruin me. This is not my career. This is a part-time thing that I do as a hobby. It used to be fun, and they're trying to take the fun out of it. But now I'm just going to grind it because I just want to rub it in their
Absolutely.
I'm going to keep going out of spite. You want to mess with me? You wanted me to leave? They were popping champagne when they said, "Oh, he's leaving. He's quitting." Now we're going to take all his listeners. No, because they're not brain dead. They're going to find somewhere else to go. But they were popping champagne corks like they'd won the World Series and the Stanley Cup together. No, it's not going to happen. I'm not leaving, so I'm here.
Yep. And we're glad that you're here. We appreciate you.
Yeah.
And we appreciate you coming on here and doing this. And
Yeah,
likewise,
we are glad.
We consider you and your
Yes.
whole team of friends also.
Yes, absolutely. And if you need anything, I'm a phone call away. You got my phone number.
Yep.
We're friends, we're allies, we're partners, whatever. If you need anything, folks, check out Blondes and Booze. I'm going to tell you right now, these are some of the nicest people. Even the way you asked me to come on your show was very nice. It was very genuine, very sweet. I was walking by and you were like, hey, Josh, come here to the table. And the way y'all did it, you had the gun under the table and I saw it. And I was like, oh, and you're like, you're going to do our show. And I think it was you, Krista. You leaned in and you were like, because I'm crazy. And I'll find you. I know where you live. And I was like, okay, all right, fine. So I just, I'm fine. I'm good. That's not what happened.
Yeah, it's like just shake your head and say yes, okay?
She's like, now go in there. She's like, she takes the gun. Now go in there and do the instinct and act like nothing happened. All right.
Right.
Yeah. I look over. Ken's like, and he acts like he didn't see anything, and that strained our friendship right there. I was like, okay. I see how it is. No, and then I went in there and I just pretended like nothing happened. I was like wide-eyed at that point. Now you guys, you were just like, I was walking by and you're like Josh. And I don't remember which one of y'all it was. I turned.
It was probably me.
And you were like, can you please do our show? And I'm like, yes, absolutely. I could do your show. You're my friend. Of course I will.
Appreciate that.
Other people say, well, he does. He's rude, whatever. I'm not rude. I don't know them. I don't know them. I don't. So you got to be careful who you deal with. You know what I mean? You got to vet people, man, because
I've learned
you get
that.
on somebody's show and then next week he's choking somebody on camera and you're like, oh, boy, that was not a good business decision right there. That wasn't a good decision for me, my reputation.
Yeah.
But that's the thing. You guys don't have any of that bull crap. So yeah, of course. And of course I want you there. And folks, don't forget, we're going to do it in Austin or in the area of Austin.
Yeah.
And hopefully Blondes and Booze, you guys will be there.
Absolutely. We'll be there. Count us in. Mm-hmm.
So,
for sure.
Okay, ladies, I'm going to run. Thank you for having me on and letting me ramble and talk.
Well, thank you for coming on. Once again, I appreciate you and your whole family. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you guys need anything, you holler at me.
Will do. Thanks, Josh.
Okay.
Bye-bye. Well, we appreciate everybody tuning in tonight, and it's been a great show. And if you haven't liked and subscribed our channel, please do so. Also, Barton Nunley, go like and subscribe to him. He is close to the 5,000 mark, and I want to do all I can to help Bart, as well as Bigfoot Michigan Rob. He's only like 100 from hitting the 3,000 mark. So we all stick together and everybody go and like everybody's pages and subscribe. We appreciate it all. So once again, guys, good night, everybody. Thanks for tuning in.
Check me out tomorrow night, Sunday night, Paranormal Roundtable. We'll be on at 7:30. Okay.
Awesome.
Bye.
Good night, everybody.